2. It's 9 county where the sun shines and the birds are singing. Commission Secretary, we call the roll. Here. 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 Have a quorum. Welcome, everyone. I have a friendly reminder for all of us present today that we're continuing to provide a live stream of our open meetings for the public to view from their home or office. If you're speaking, please make sure you speak into the microphone and that the microphone is on so the viewers can hear what's being said. We're going to start our meeting today with a brief safety emphasis. Stephen O'Connor, our area engineer, is going to share with us what we need to do in case of an emergency.
Thank you. So first off, this is a fairly brief summary of what we need to do in case of an emergency. In the event of a fire, everyone will exit these doors and go straight ahead through the doors we came in on, or you can go to the right and exit at that location. And please gather at the corner of this building, away from the building, so emergency vehicles can get to the location. And if there's a small fire, Mark Corcoran has volunteered to grab the fire extinguisher, which is near the front door. In the event of severe weather, which doesn't look very likely, but just in case, you exit this door and take a right, and there's stairwell to go downstairs, and that's the safest location in the building. And if we must evacuate the room, please take note of the person you're sitting next to, and we get to that safe location, make sure that person is still with you and near you, so we know everyone has just left the building. If there is a medical emergency, Tom Blair has volunteered to call 911 and direct emergency responders to the 729 Maple Street location here. Becky Almaroth and Eric Schroeder will administer CPR if needed. And there's an AED in the corner of the building, and Ed Hassinger has volunteered to relieve the AED if necessary. And as a safety sensitive object, if there is an active shooter or an intruder, there's 3 basic principles to follow if this is the case. The first one is run and escape if possible. So that's the first option, is leave as soon as you can and get away. The second is hide, and if escape is not possible. So if you can't exit building, find a safe place to hide, try to barricade the doors, and turn off your cell phones and turn off the lights. And the last option is fight, and that means throw objects, chairs, fire extinguishers, any kind of books that you might have, just to try to fight off any possible intruder. And that does conclude our safety speech, so have a good day.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to recognize our special guest. Today we have State Representative Cindy Bucay-Courtway. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Rep. Next, I'd like to review a few procedural items. I want to remind everyone that we have a public comment period, and we're pleased to offer this to all Missourians that want to come and speak before the commission. Anyone that would like to address the commission, please sign up before 9:30. A reminder that you'll have 5 minutes for public comments or 10 minutes per subject. We also have an abstention process where there are commissioners that, because of land ownership or business interests, or lawyers that may represent clients, would either have some relationship to a matter coming before the commission and may have a potential or actual conflict of interest to be considered to be voted on. The commission member will indicate if he or she chooses to abstain from voting or to recuse himself from participating in discussion of an agenda item. If the agenda item is divisible by contract, call, project, or the like, a commissioner may specify that the particular matter and then still vote on the remainder of the agenda items. This information is provided to the commission secretary by letter in advance of the meeting. Commission secretary, have these letters been duly reported? Okay. We are going to table the approval of the meeting minutes from last week. We're still have consideration on some of those items. The next item is consideration of the consent agenda. Does anyone need to remove any item for discussion later or abstain? None. I'll entertain a motion for approval?
So moved. Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Before I move on, I'd like to highlight one item that the commission just approved in the consent agenda. That is the I-50 corridor project in Jefferson County. Yay. Officially authorizing this to be a design build project. And it's great to get this project moving along in this area. The project will improve traffic flow and access along US 67 and I-55, reduce crashes and improve bridge conditions. It should really help traffic control and safety for us using these roads down in this region. Next order of business is to receive a committee report. I serve as the chair of the audit committee, and Commissioners Briscoe and Eckert also serve on that committee. I'll give today's report, which is that we have no report. That next meeting will be on June 6th, coming up next week. Commissioner Briscoe and I serve as co-chairs of the legislative committee, and Commissioner Briscoe will give today's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The 2022 session of the Missouri General Assembly adjourned on May 13th. At the end of the session, the General Assembly passed a total of 43 non-budget bills, and these are now headed to Governor Parsons' desk for his consideration to be signed into law. Examples of past legislation include additional protections to landowners who oppose private companies' use of eminent domain. That's one. Another is requiring voters to show a photo ID in order to cast a ballot during future elections. Lawmakers also approved the largest budget in the state's history. With historical levels of state and federal COVID-19 relief funding, the legislature focused on appropriating billions of dollars on numerous projects from across the state. These range from additional funding to public schools and universities to providing a $500 million plan for tax rebates for Missouri's income taxpayers. As Missouri lawmakers worked to identify ways to spend additional revenues, the national and state economies began to decline, thus drawing the attention of some lawmakers to offer ideas for tax relief for Missourians. Two proposals relating to transportation that were unsuccessful included enacting a one-time 6-month holiday on motor fuel sales and delaying the 5-year phase-in of the new 12.5-cent per gallon fuel tax increase that passed the legislature last session. Had either of these proposals passed, future statewide transportation improvement programs would have been negatively impacted due to the decrease in state funds. These proposals would have had substantial negative impact on the funding provided to the counties and counties and cities from the new fuel tax as outlined in Missouri's Constitution. Throughout the 22 legislative session, Modot staff worked with other safety advocates to advance its safety proposal championed by the commission and by Modot. This proposal was focused on prohibiting handheld cell phone and other electronic wireless communication devices the use of those while driving to all drivers. Current law only prohibits drivers 21 years of age and under from using an electronic communication device when operating a motor vehicle. Missouri and Montana are the only two states that do not prohibit texting while driving for all drivers. While this measure received a lot of news media attention and received public hearings in each chamber, no such legislation passed this session. Optimism remains high for passage during the 2023 session as energized organizations and agencies continue to support this hands-free measure to save lives on Missouri's highways. We'll hear more about the results of the legislative session when Brenda Morris provides us with a summary of the fiscal year 2000. Whoops. That wasn't on, was it?
Could you start over?
Y'all want me to start over?
Yeah, I'll start.
I don't think so.
I think you should, John.
I think Commissioner Smith ought to be quiet. We'll hear more about the results of the legislative session when Brenda Morris provides us with a summary of the fiscal year 2023 budget debate, and Patrick McKenna, the director, will have more to add to this report during his director's report. This concludes the legislative committee report, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Briscoe. Commissioner Smith serves as president of the MTFC, and Commissioners Waters and Commissioner Eckert are board members. Commissioner Smith will provide the report for you today.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have not met. Our next meeting, the MTFC, will be in August. I will have a lengthy report for you then.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Smith, Boatwright, and Eckert serve on the Emperor's Board today. Commissioner Boatwright will provide the report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There is no report. However, we do have a board meeting scheduled for June the 16th, which is 2 weeks from today. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Boatwright. As chairman, I serve on the Missouri Coalition for Road Safety Executive Committee and will provide a report today. The Missouri Coalition for Road Safety Executive Committee did not meet in May. However, there are a few things I'd like to highlight. First, we're just wrapping up the state's participation in the national Click It or Ticket campaign. This campaign focuses on reminding drivers and passengers of all ages to take the simple action of buckling up every trip, every time. More than 100 law enforcement agencies throughout Missouri have participated in this year's campaign. This month, Missouri will continue its annual seatbelt usage survey. Last year recorded 88% usage. However, there's still a little room for improvement. The national average is 90%. Through the month of May, Missouri experienced a 4% decrease in traffic fatalities. Since the beginning of April, fatalities in Missouri are down 20%, which is great news. We have 42 counties with 0 fatalities this year. Better news. This is a critical time of the year, as we know. Many people are driving around for the summer, increased travel time between Memorial Day and Labor Day. Coalition is going to be undertaking several efforts during these days to remind Missourians of the 4 actions they can take to help show me 0 fatalities. They are buckle up, phone down. Okay, if I'll go like that. Come on. All right, that's it. And it's slow down and drive sober. The next Missouri Coalition Road Safety Executive Committee will be in September of this year. Next item on the agenda is the Modot Director's report. Patrick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, and thanks everybody for being here today. We really appreciate that. Glad to be here in Jefferson County. First thing I want to do is just take a moment to mention the passing of a great construction leader in the St. Louis area. Bob Hofer of Millstone Weber passed away Sunday morning after a brief battle with cancer. He was 64. Mentor and partner extraordinaire to Modot and to this region. And I just want to turn it over to Ed Hassinger, who worked very closely with Bob over the years, for a few remarks.
So, you know, when within the organization, we create a lot of relationships with our team, but we have a lot of relationships with our partners. And over the years, Bob came to Millstone Weber at the entry level, and over the 40-year career rose to be one of the leaders in that organization. And I look around the room and I think about all the resident engineers that are probably in the room that probably worked with Bob over his career, and all the projects that he built, the rebuild of I-64, the new Page Avenue, probably every interchange on 270 he had something to do with. And so his legacy continues throughout the region and throughout our industry, and we're going to miss Bob's great leadership and his steady hand in the face of chaos sometimes. And I know that I look around and I see all the REs, and I'd say raise your hand if you worked with Bob over the years.
Look at that.
Just in the room. So that just shows you what impact Bob had on the work that we do, and we're going to miss him.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed. You know, I also want to make mention of we have a substitute commission secretary here today with Jennifer Jorgensen, who has stepped in to the role temporarily as Pam Harlan is working with some family health issues. We wish Pam and her family well. But I also want to recognize Dana Kaiser, who immediately stepped in to volunteer to help out with this meeting today, and our whole team. I just think it's a great example. Jennifer, Dana, supporting Pam and working through all the things that happen, and we're in great hands with our team, and we've already begged forgiveness from Pam for the corrections that she'll have to make of us next month. Not of Jennifer and Dana, of course, but of our role here, mine included, or maybe specifically. So we want to I just want to recognize it's just a great example of how Modot folds in and picks up and helps out each other and supports each other. It's the same way we do it when there's turnover. It's the same way we do it with all these things, but I think it's important to recognize. The other recognition, just briefly, that I'd like to say is I believe we have a commissioner that's on a anniversary date, 9 years of service on a 6-year term commission, Mr. Greg Smith. And I think it's worth recognizing the efforts here, the voluntary time spent away from family, away from business interests to support transportation in Missouri, because he cares about Missouri, cares about Missourians, and has just been a tremendous leader. We've done the research, and in the modern Super Bowl era, Mr. Smith is the longest serving commissioner, not in total era, but in the modern Super Bowl age. So I'd just like to thank those guys.
Thank you, Patrick.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And to build on a couple points that Commissioner Briscoe talked about, when we talked about the legislative work and the work in the General Assembly and the leadership of Governor Parson, the leadership of this commission, we are so gratified by the work of both the General Assembly, the governor, the Lieutenant Governor Kehoe as well, Governor Parson, this commission, and holding at the stance that was taken, the leadership that was done in advance of federal action. But 2 years ago, the last legislative session, passing for the first time since 1996, an increment increase in the motor fuel tax here in Missouri. That set the table for being able to match the federal funds that were then passed in this past November. And we have been planning for this for a long time, but very specifically, the commission has led the department into reaching out all over the state to find the unfunded needs, the things we weren't getting to. That's been a 2-year process. It's been well worth the effort. It's baked into our annual process now. And having done so, we were able to move very quickly with a preliminary draft road and bridge plan that lays out $7.7 billion of construction awards, total value of about $9.9 billion. When you add in the low volume road investment that the General Assembly added with the governor's support and the commission's support, a $10 billion statewide transportation improvement program that is out for public comment right now. This is extraordinary. It's the largest in Missouri state history, but that effort through the legislative process to not repeal the gas tax and to not do a gas tax holiday, the work that was done within the department, our planning and all of our districts and divisions to identify those projects that would be at risk had that action taken, it created an informed policy decision for the General Assembly. And we're very, very pleased with the work that was done there. Hard work. This is tough, particularly when you're looking at increased pricing that is going on throughout the economy. The General Assembly passed a tax relief bill to provide rebates to taxpayers rather than taking it from the gas tax, which would have probably only provided about 18 or 20% of the benefit directly to the taxpayers, and the rest would have accrued to the oil industry, frankly. Obviously we need that industry in place, but I think the informed policy was turned out to be good policy. And it was hard work to go through that. It was well worth the work. Our team did a really great job of doing that and working through it. Our government relations team, led by Jay Wunderlich, did a terrific job of getting that word out and making sure that the policy was informed. So we're very gratified with that. We're pleased with the work that's being done. We're receiving comments on the plan, and we're very happy to be moving forward with that level of investment. It's desperately needed here in Missouri, and we can't get to it soon enough. So we're going to hear more about some of the aspects of those plans, some of the investment in all over the state in dealing with typical road and bridge conditions, and that's vitally important. Also, just briefly, as our chairman mentioned, you know, this week's Memorial Day holiday marked the kind of the unofficial start of summer, but it also means for us work zones. Lots of work out there. If you look at our traveler information map, you're going to see hundreds of construction projects every day across all corners of the state. And that highway safety report that was mentioned, Memorial Day is also the start of what is considered some of the deadliest days on Missouri roadways and nationwide. The kind of the 100 deadliest days, that whole summer period between Memorial Day and Labor Day. And, you know, this Memorial Day was no exception. There were 11 fatalities on Missouri roadways during this weekend. We understand several of those were with motorcycle incidents. So really ask people to be aware of your surroundings when you're driving. Pay attention. There's a lot more motorcycle traffic that occurs. Really have to look for your blind spots before you're changing lanes. And unfortunately, because of a policy change in the state that took us backwards in public safety policy countermeasures, the repeal of the motorcycle helmet restriction, 4 of those fatalities were unhelmeted motorcycle drivers. So even though it's not a state law, if you're driving a motorcycle this summer, please consider wearing a helmet. It could save your life, and it could avoid some of the incidents that occur and all of the trauma that occurs through the entire emergency management system when those fatalities occur. So it's vitally important with the increase in our construction work, with the increase in motorcycles, and with all of the vacationing and activities going on, that motorists really please go out and use our traveler information map, plan your trips, understand where the work zones are, and please slow down through the work zones. You know, we have construction workers out there from the private sector. We have Modot teams out there every day doing maintenance, trying to keep you safe and improve the conditions. And we need all of those people to go home safely every day. You know, as the economy is experiencing some heightened cost, we are experiencing that in our construction program. It's vitally important that I think people understand the way that we program our statewide transportation improvement program. We use fiscal constraint. It's a federal requirement, but the way that we do it here in Missouri, I think, deserves some attention because it's particularly helpful in times like these. We program about 80% on a 5-year basis of the resource availability, and we update this every year. So we sweep in kind of the 4th year, about half of the 4th year's estimated money into that new planning cycle. It's important for that fiscal constraint because in year 1, 2, and 3, which for us is fiscal year 23, 4, and 5, we program 100% of the estimated resources. And when prices are good, we actually over-program a little bit so that we maximize the construction output. When prices are rising, we have to be careful about that. But I think citizens should be aware that next year we would have estimated about $750 million of new construction work being brought into next year's STIP. The price increases that we're already experiencing have us about 11% ahead of budget right now on over $1 billion, almost $1.2 billion So you're talking about $130, $140 million over budget for this year's construction. If this continues on pace, that's going to cut at least in half what we can bring forward as new construction next year. And the reason we do that is because we will adjust up to the prices of that which we've already committed to as construction, so that the commitments are made, so that communities understand when we've got the construction outlined in the STIP, we're going to get to it. It's a commitment of the commission and the department. And it's, I think, good practice. But that'll be a little disappointing next year in terms of the level of new projects coming in. That's just what we have to deal with. Our contractors are dealing with a great deal of risk with price escalations on their end, labor shortages, equipment shortages, material issues. So all of those things we're trying to manage in a growing construction program. And we'll continue to monitor this and report to the commission and to the public about those impacts as we're going. We've got a tremendous amount to cover in the agenda today. And I would love to talk in detail about the Missouri State Freight Plan and Rail Plan and the Draft Supply Chain Task Force, which I had the opportunity to co-chair. We're in the middle of it. These are really important documents, but we have Cheryl Ball is going to present those. We've talked about the budget update, which is vitally important. We're going to have update from our motor carrier services team. And frankly, those folks should be giving those updates. So I'll stop there so we can get right into it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Patrick. Any comments on Patrick's
Just a
presentation?
comment, Patrick, and you really appreciate staff having the foresight to only program about 80% to the STEP. You know, the shortage of workers and these costs, like you see, and everything's going up, but vehicles are not getting any higher. This is concerning to the commission. You know, it's concerning for everybody in business in America, you know, grocery prices and everything. So staff's being very diligent and watching these costs. And we appreciate all of their work and your leadership. Really do.
Thank you.
It is very concerning.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a non-action item, and it's a presentation from Jefferson County. Tom Blair, St. Louis District Engineer, will introduce our speakers today. Tom, welcome.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners and Director. I'm honored to introduce to you Dennis Gannon. He's County Executive of this county, Jefferson County, that's hosting today. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dennis.
Welcome, Mr. Gannon.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure to be here and sitting in your chair.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Brinkman, Commissioners, and Director McKenna. On behalf of the County Council of Jefferson County, the County Administration, and the citizens of Jefferson County, we want to welcome you to our county. Today, we're going to be offering a brief presentation for making strides for safer roads in Jefferson County. So we had scheduled our Public Works Director to be here, and he is not going to be here today. And I'm going to introduce David Courtway, who's our Director of Administration, who oversees that department, and just give you a recap of the really great things that are on the horizon for Jefferson County. So thank you all. And David, please.
Good morning,
Morning.
members of the commission, Director McKenna, and the Modot staff. I'd like to echo County Executive's comments. Welcome to Jefferson County. We appreciate you being here. I appreciate everyone's diligence and efforts and commitment to making our highway and transportation network system safer for the citizens of our state. As County Executive mentioned, our team has put together some very, very high level points we'd like to talk to you about with a common theme of making strides towards safer roads. There we go. All right, so it's already been mentioned, the big project, the I-55 corridor improvements are between Route Z and Route 67 interchanges in Jefferson County. This video was taken right at the beginning of the Peevely exit, which is the northernmost part of this project. If you look to all the way to the left of your screen, that freer moving traffic flow is the exit to Route Z there at Peevely. So this is a big project. The costs now are estimated to be over $200 million. We appreciate the synergy that has been built through our county, through all the stakeholders, East-West Gateway, Modot, and this is going to bring vital safety improvements. It's going to bring economic development to our county. We always want to look at that potential as well when we're looking at our road system. There's moderate to heavy PM traffic congestion in this area, all through this corridor. The 3-year crash rate for this corridor is about 27%, and it's above the statewide average for interstates. So you can see our concern there as well. There have been some fatalities along this corridor as well. There's been substantial project input gathered through the community advisory groups. It's been put together and the general public. The Modot project team's completing the conceptual study report and as you've all had on your agenda to move this project forward. And again, we greatly appreciate that. Again, improving Missouri's interstates will improve safety and spark economic growth. This particular footage was taken on April 29th around 4 p.m. There were known accidents or other reasons for traffic delays at this time other than the traffic. So the Modot state highway system, we'd like to give a little comparison here. Jefferson County compared to the state. Jefferson County traffic fatalities, it's up nearly 60% in 4 years. So we're very concerned about that. And as you will see in a few moments, there's a couple of other initiatives that we're going to try to build some synergy onto in other parts of our county. And for the Missouri traffic fatalities, statewide, they're up over 10% over the last 4 years, 15% in the last 3 years. So as you can see, Jefferson County is exceeding that average substantially. The increased federal and state funding for our infrastructure has been authorized. Again, we appreciate everyone in this room. We appreciate our legislators, our federal, even at the federal level. I believe we have some representatives here today from the federal level for pushing infrastructure improvements. Rural and suburban traffic safety drives our local transportation priorities forward. So these are some of the unfunded, the wish list we put together for Jefferson County. The first 6 projects are directly from the Modot unfunded Tier 2 and 3 priority projects. And the remaining NA projects indicated up there are from the county Tier 2 and 3 funding. And these were all included in a letter sent to Modot in 21. I'd like to cover a couple of these briefly. The first one up there is just pavement rehabilitation, obviously. But when we move down to the Route K in Imperial, it's about the 5th one down on that list. We're trying to create a network. There's been some port funds spent up there to develop a landing. And we're trying to deliver a path for pedestrian and shared use in Valley, which is a highly populated area for people to move and navigate through those areas. I would like to also discuss some of the bottom ones there. The northbound I-55 to bound US 61 and 67. We have partnered recently with one of Modot's consultants, I believe it's WSP, to look at to expand the traffic study right at the tail end of this I-55 project, which could possibly benefit some economic development projects that are being under consideration right now. And if you're familiar with that area, you were all in the Festus Crystal City area last night over by the hospital. I don't know if you were by Jefferson Hospital. The traffic there daily that's probably the largest employer we have in the county. So this study is going to look at that whole area as well and see if maybe we can partner and do something additional in that area. As we move forward, we're looking at routes FF and W to Eureka. Some of our east-west network system needs to be vastly improved. as population has increased, traffic counts have increased, and trying to get workers to and from St. Louis, Franklin County working, and just that area is very congested. And we're looking at possibly adding additional lanes through that area. Also, the bottom, the last item on there, again, is Route 141 from St. Louis County to US 6167. We are trying to move efforts forward to conduct a traffic study and a needs assessment in that area also for potential recommendations. I failed to mention, I apologize, the fourth one down was I-55 St. Louis County approach to the bridge. We've had recent challenges there with floodwaters. That portion of the highway right at the bridge has flooded a couple times, and I-55 had to be completely shut down temporarily. So we're looking at possibly coming up with some plans and moving some ideas forward to maybe raise that elevation a little bit out of the floodplain, because when that highway was shut down, it created quite a bottleneck throughout this county, so from other counties. Next slide. So our county roadway system, we have 668 miles of county roadways, and Director Jonas isn't here today, but I want to give him just kudos to he and his staff. You know, they do a tremendous job of maintaining our county roadways. And we always hear from the citizens that they do an excellent job, and very committed to actually finding available resources to match monies and everything else. And he's been very successful in that. We have 75 miles of maintained subdivision streets. This was a program that was started. The county council approved this about 3 years ago. We started bringing some of our subdivisions, if they meet certain standards and criteria, into our county road plan. Those people pay road tax too in this county, so we felt it was only fair that they should, reap the benefit as well. We also have 171 bridges in this county, a lot of bridges. We all know Missouri is notorious for bridges. We have bridges, a lot of bridges. Our department, highway department's primarily funded through a half-cent sales tax, totally dedicated to county roads. We've had that in place since 1986. And that is a 15-year re-up, and the citizens have blessed us with re-upping that a couple of times. Our 2022 to 2026 transportation improvement plan includes 54 projects totaling over $81 million, so it's pretty aggressive. And our county tip includes 19 projects totaling over 40 safety improvements. So here's kind of a map. It's kind of cluttered. Shows we've had and other incidents on our highway system here in the county. We did have a traffic plan approved by the County Council in August of 21, and it was based on the 2014 through 2019 crash data. And the roads were evaluated based on the EPDO touring. It identified 37 traffic safety priority locations and 12 watch list locations. 6 traffic safety priority locations are currently under construction or completed. And there's over a dozen additional traffic safety locations currently being analyzed for local and federal funding options. In 2014, Jefferson County Strategic Highway Safety Plan was a huge success. It was a collaborative effort involving Jefferson County, Modot, East-West Gateway Council of Governments officials to develop a systemic roadmap toward improving traffic safety. The county initiated several projects and programs from this first effort 8 years ago. Some of the major undertakings were the school safety zone improvements, roadway curve signing projects, speed feedback sign installations, and many other small projects. The 2021 County Road Safety Plan is the second generation comprehensive and system-wide approach to continual improvements in the local road traffic safety. Some traffic safety priority project highlights. I mentioned the Sequin Valley corridor earlier. This is one currently under construction, nearing completion. We constructed new roundabouts at Old Lamey Ferry Road and Seckman and Lions Den. Installed 2 signalized intersections in front of the school there, Fox C6. They have 3 school building camp on that campus there, and they're all K through 12. So within the 3/4 mile corridor, we also installed 11 rapid rotating flashing beacon crosswalk signs and 6-foot ADA compliant sidewalks on both sides of the Seckman Road and through the roundabout. It also ties into the school's campus and nearby subdivisions. So this is quite an impressive project. As you're leaving Jefferson County, if you want to exit 55 briefly, see that in rapid fashion. So our Modot Jefferson County partnership initiatives. Our recent agency collaboration efforts have included, obviously, the I-55 corridor improvement study, the Modot high priority unfunded tier 3, road and bridge project needs determination, the Modot high priority from state to county of old state roads. You may not heard this much throughout the state, but this is something we're trying to kick off with collaboration with local Modot representatives, and we're looking to ramp this up. Basically, taking a lot of the old state routes over and bringing them under county maintenance, taking them off the state, and keep those roads up to snuff. So again, it's a determination of certain state lettered routes, conveying them over to be named remnant roads. Jefferson County truly appreciates every opportunity to work with the Modot staff. I'd like to give a big thank you to they're tremendous, working with our Port Authority, working with our county. We really appreciate their efforts. If you have any questions, again, you have this packet. Mr. Jonas can be contacted at jonas@jeffcomod.org. You can contact me at dcourtway@jeffcomod.org, and we will provide as much information or all the information you need as quickly as we can. Again, I want to thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Courtway. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Courtway?
I don't have a question. I just partnership with MoDOT as we work together to solving transportation needs in Jefferson County. We really appreciate your help.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Patrick, anything?
No, I think, laying out the way it was laid out here, it is a good reflection of the partnership that goes on. We can't do anything at the state level without great community leaders and people that are thinking not just in single fiscal year items, but looking at the long-term benefits, and really appreciate the focus on safety that's going on here. It is concerning to see such a high percentage increase in fatalities, and we stand ready to work with you to help solve those problems. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Have a great day.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is a non-action item. Will be a presentation by Jefferson County Port Authority, one we've been waiting for, concerning the container on vessel service up here. Cheryl Ball, Administrator of the Freight and Waterways, will introduce the speakers today. Cheryl.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director McKenna. Thank you for the opportunity this morning for us to explain a little more about container on vessel and give you a status update. You all have heard a lot about it. This morning to present this to you, we will have the Director of the Jefferson County Port Authority, Mr. Jim McNichols, and we will have Mary Lamey, who is with Bi-State Development, and you all may know her better as we've touted her often as the Executive Director of the St. Louis Freightway, which is nationally known. So I will turn this over to those two.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Director McKenna. Appreciate the opportunity to share a status update on this very exciting project in the field of logistics, and specifically the movement of containerized cargo via the inland river system. I'm just merely going to provide an introduction for Mary Lamey, the director of the Regional Freightway, and just make a personal comment as someone who's been involved in this project, not just in my current position, but in my previous position working for Congressman Luke DeMeyer. This is the most exciting thing to happen for not just the field of transportation, but the agriculture, manufacturing, the movement of Missouri products to the greater export market in the world. And Mary has been a big part of this. She's been a huge cheerleader for the identification and the advocacy of funding for transportation improvements specifically related to the effective, efficient, cost-effective movement of freight in and out of the St. Louis region. And so I'm going to turn it over to her, but I really appreciate her leadership on this, and she's been a big part of why we're where we're at. So Mary Lamey with the St. Louis Regional Freightway. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, Jim. I want to thank the chairman and the commission, Director McKenna, and all the Modot staff for your support and including us with today's program. So I'm going to give you a quick update on the container on vessel service in Herculaneum. So this slide shows you there's been a lot of discussions about container on barge, and you can see that slide on the left where you have 20-foot containers stacked up on a series of barges pushed by a towboat. Today, we're really focusing on container on vessel. So it is a vessel that is specifically designed for containers to be stacked up in a very large quantity. And that's what you see on container on vessel. So we have been working with the Port of Plaquemines Port, which is in southern Louisiana. Next couple of slides really focus on the criteria and how they've chosen two super ports. One of them is Herculaneum, and this really focuses on why Herculaneum. So these slides mention St. Louis. Obviously, Herculaneum is part of the St. Louis region. They're looking for locations that when you have a super hub, that container on vessel carries over 2,000 containers. So you have to be able to distribute those containers very efficiently. And if you think about a truck, it has a 53-foot container on it. If you think of a train, it's carrying about 300 to 400 containers. Think of scale of economy. Think about buying toilet paper from Sam's versus Dollar General. This is 2,000. You're driving those prices down significantly. So you need to be able to distribute a very large quantity of containers. So for the St. Louis region, we have 4 interstates. You can see on this map what's really important when you're distributing these types of containers: one-day truck drive to major metropolitan areas, other areas that are very dense in manufacturing. So for the St. Louis area, we are a one-day truck drive to Chicago, Kansas City, Indianapolis, Louisville, and Memphis. They're going to look at the rail component because you're also going to distribute these containers on rail. For our area, we are home to 6 Class 1 railroads. What's interesting is the West Coast rail carriers, BNSF, Union Pacific. The furthest east they go is St. Louis. The East Coast railroads, that Norfolk Southern and CSX, the furthest east they go is St. Louis. So we are basically the nexus of those 6 Class 1 railroads, which is really important when we're talking about this. The other thing is, let's talk specifics about those railroads. 4 of those railroads have scheduled rail service to the St. Louis area. That's like when you're flying a commercial airline like Southwest Airlines. They have a scheduled service 5 times a week. Same thing for these railroads. They have a scheduled service in and out of the St. Louis area, and obviously that is much cheaper than trying to book a chartered airline service. The Inland Waterway System. We are the nexus of 3 rivers. Missouri, Illinois, and the Mississippi River all converge in the St. Louis area. When we started partnering with the Port of New Orleans, they had indicated we are the envy to the barge industry, and that's because of the geographic advantage we have in this area. We are lock-free and ice-free to and from the Gulf of Mexico. In the barge industry, number one, it is one of the cheapest modes of transportation, and you want to maximize that cheapest lane from the Gulf of Mexico to the St. Louis area, lock-free and ice-free. So those lock and dams north of us act like traffic signals, adding time and money. So you want to maximize that lane. And so that's where the barge industry and this group for container and vessel, they want to get as far north, maximizing that cheaper rate. For our area, we are deemed as the most efficient inland port system. We are the 3rd largest inland port system. And then we've branded ourselves as one location global access. Focusing on the rail component, you can see all those spider legs that once that rail takes you to most of those coasts, you can see the interaction we have at a global perspective. What we are now wanting to do is show that spider leg from the Gulf Coast utilizing the inland water advantage. So for the St. Louis region, we have branded ourselves as Ag Coast of America. Nowhere else on the inland waterway system is moving the amount of ag and fertilizer products anywhere than the St. Louis. That is, yeah, we have that geographic advantage, centrally located in the U.S., most strategic location on the Mississippi River. But that doesn't mean you're a super hub. You're a super hub when you have the infrastructure that supports all those modes of transportation. And that's exactly what the St. Louis area has. And as many as you are aware, we also have the capacity within all those modes of transportation. So whether it's COVID-19, a COVID-30, or some type of weather disruption, the St. Louis region serves as an alternate, and we stand ready for any influxes when it comes to supply chain disruptions. Now, focusing on the global market, and these next couple of slides, we actually put these together before COVID. And so the history behind this is those vessels that we hear are parked in the West Coast. They have been getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So 1968, they carried 1,500 containers. Going to 2018, they were carrying 22,000 containers. Present day, they are fabricating new vessels that are carrying over 24,000 containers. So again, scale of economy keeps getting bigger and bigger. The market is changing. This is a slide that I think we're all now familiar with thanks to these slides are before COVID. It's great with COVID now because everybody's very familiar with these slides. Now let's take this down to a national level, again, before COVID. And that is Coast and West Coast ports continue to invest in their ports so they're big ship ready. They're investing in their harbors, they're investing in their dredging operations. And you can see the arrow that I included on there for the Gulf Coast. And that's where we need to take advantage of that. And that's where what we're wanting to do is send those vessels through the Panama Canal and up the Mississippi River. And I'm going to go back to the slide real quick. And so the Panama Canal, remember a couple of years ago when they rebuilt it, it's deeper and wider, and again, so that they're big ship ready. So again, what we're wanting to do is ship containerized cargo on the vessels that you see on the right. We are partnering with the state of Missouri ports. We're working very closely with our sister city, Kansas City and Jefferson City. And then the other ports that are part of this logistics network of the river system and part of this container on vessel initiative, you can see they are all highlighted on this area. The two super hubs right now are St. Louis and Memphis. The other locations are going to be smaller port facilities. The slide that I'm not going to go back to it, but the slide that I showed you before, that's going to carry over 2,000 containers. They're also designing a hybrid vessel that can carry about 1,200. And those types of vessels would then be able to travel along the Missouri River and up the Illinois River into some of the other smaller ports that you see on there. So we are partnering with the Port of Plaquemines. They are located in southern Louisiana. You can see on this map, big picture, you can kind of see where Lake Pontchartrain is. You can see where New Orleans is located. The arrow is indicating that's where the Port of Plaquemines. They are 59 nautical miles south of New Orleans for that very reason we talked about. Those really big vessels cannot get into New Orleans. They are too big. This location is at a point on the channel that it's wide enough and deep enough for those vessels to get in and out. This is a map that we put together, again, emphasizing right now the traditional route for those to Los Angeles, put on a train, and then shipped to the St. Louis area. What we're proposing is an all-water route that those vessels would go from Asia or other parts of the world through the Panama Canal to the Gulf of Mexico. When it gets to Port of Plaquemines, they would then be unloaded from that very large vessel to the vessels that are specifically being designed for the Mississippi River and then shipped. It's refrigerated goods, it's construction material, it's shoes, it's computer. There is a preliminary design that's in place. That configuration would look like. On the bottom right of the schematic, it says phase 1A and phase 1B. This is where it's going to be designed for two of those very large vessels to be able to dock at this location. Our facility is going to be much larger. And so for those very large vessels, it'll be designed to accommodate 4 of the large vessels and then the smaller vessels. I think what's interesting on this is, again, the points that the reason that they're coming to the St. Louis area and Herculane, Missouri are the same reasons why they picked that. The class 1 railroads are the exact same ones that we have. A couple slides. This really focuses on the benefits. So from a cost savings, we are anticipating that from a transportation cost, the cost savings can be about 25% or greater for both imports and exports. Transit time in this environment that we're in right now during COVID and those continued supply chains on the West Coast, but we basically said it was going to be about the same transit time, but obviously the costs are what the real interest would be. Just some trivia for you. So this vessel can actually travel twice as fast as what a typical barge and a towboat can travel, traveling upriver. And then for fuel, it's liquefied natural gas or LNG. And then I think I hit most of the major points as far as the impacts of this from an economic, multimodal, and efficiency. For safety and travel, obviously, we would be able to pull off some trucks off the interstate system. So from a safety perspective, it offers that. And sustainability, obviously, a reduced air emissions advantage. Funding announcements, and that's thanks to Jefferson County and the Jefferson County Port Authority working very closely with industry leaders. The governor's office and our elected leaders were able to announce a $25 million funding for this facility. And then next steps, American Patriot Holding, who is the lead for the vessels, have an RFP out to actually select a shipyard to start fabricating the vessels. We are hoping that they make an announcement for that shipyard sometime this summer. And then Hawtex Development was announced to be the developer for the Herculane site. They are in the process of a development agreement with the two property owners. The action item for the state of Missouri, St. Louis, and Kansas City is that we are working for shippers to identify imports and export opportunities. They are planning on launching the service in 2024, starting with Memphis. Memphis has a signed shipper, and that's one of the reasons why they are able to go out with the bids for fabricating these vessels. For the St. Louis area, we are hoping that we would be able to launch the service sometime late 2024. And so that was a really quick overview on this really fantastic project. And again, I want to thank all the support from Jefferson County Port Authority, and the Missouri Department of Transportation. This isn't something that we've been working on for the last year. It's something we've been working on obviously for the last couple of years. But more importantly, I think that's really interesting is we initially partnered with the Port of New Orleans 6 years ago. I went down there and started that partnership based on the media coverage and everyone recognizing the great freight network that we have in this area. The group from Plaquemines called us. They came to us. So in other words, private sector is leading this, and it's not a public agency thing where we want to build it and people will come. This is where private sector is recognizing the value in this project. So thank you for the opportunity to present today.
Mary, thank you. This is exciting stuff to me. I've been hearing about container on barge, container on vessel since before the improvements to the Panama Canal. The RFP that you talked about, will that be for both the larger and the smaller vessels or just the large?
For now, it's just the larger vessels. And part of that is they obviously have enough commitment for those 4 vessels. If once we kick in for the St. Louis area, they're anticipating once we get commitments for that, they will probably go for another RFP. Those will be for the larger, the liner. The smaller ones, probably, I'm not quite sure what their schedule with that is, but the important thing is just because you don't have the hybrid vessel doesn't mean you can't go up the Missouri River. That's where the container on barge operations come in play. So these two are not in competition. We need container on barge to help with the distribution of these containers.
Great. This is exciting. And also think about the number of trucks that this takes off the highway system and that the safety of that, and the number of containers it takes off the rail that's overcrowded as well. So appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you.
So we've heard about this for 4 years, and I think last year I asked, are one of the boats being constructed right now?
No. They are not. So that's where they have the RFP for the 4 vessels. So we're hoping they make the announcement of which shipyard was selected to actually fabricate them. What we do have now are container on barge operations, and that's where Modot has been working with several of the terminals along the Missouri River.
That's the smaller one.
I'm sorry?
It's the smaller ones.
Yes, that is correct.
How exciting. Patrick, you got any comments?
First of all, I want to, Mary, thank you for being here and for your leadership. Mary was also appointed to the Supply Chain Task Force. As you can see, a very good pick by the governor to aid on that. She's been very helpful there. But I also wanted to recognize the work that Mary's been doing with the Freightway. In conjunction with Jim, I see Jim Wild here from East West Gateway, working together over the last several years. They've been able to really crystallize very high value priorities for removing bottlenecks in the entire freight network. So the work that's been done in advance of this is really important and ties together with this to emphasize St. Louis as a destination and a really important part of the supply chain in the country and in the world. But recognizing and advancing the work on Merchants Bridge and huge support to generate, which is a very difficult thing on a regional basis, to secure the resources to do the work that we're doing on I-270. These are two of the bigger priorities for the Freightway, and they became also very high priorities for the department and now in funded status and moving through the construction. Those are vital links. This is another piece to the puzzle, and it's folding together nicely. It's really exciting. And Mary's been a big part of the leadership of all of that. So thank you, Mary, for your leadership.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. The next item on the agenda is an action item. Travis Kester, State Design Engineer, are going to present the bids for our consideration. Travis, welcome.
Good morning, Chairman Brinkman, Commissioners, Director McKenna. I'm here to present the results of the May 20th, 2022 bid opening, where we received 95 bids on 41 different calls for projects. Today, we recommend the following, and that's to award all calls to the lowest responsive bidder except for calls F01, F10, and F12 located in the St. Louis District, and calls H04 and H08 located in the Southeast District. We recommend rejection of call F01 and H04 due to excessive bids for Section 102.15 of the Missouri specifications for highway construction. And we recommend the award of calls F10, F12, and H08 contingent upon receiving additional funding from our partners on the projects, which is several cities. You know, and with the market changes, those original agreements were kind of old, you know, for the start of the project. So the prices are a little higher. So we just need to redo those cost agreements with the city, but all the cities are on board and moving those forward. So with that, those are our recommendations for you today.
Thank you, Travis. Any questions for Travis?
Mr. Chairman, first I'll say thank you, Travis, for your report. I noticed we still have a little less competition in some areas, and there remains a lot of variance in the markets. But nonetheless, I move we accept the report.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Travis, do you have a budget update for us?
Yes, I do. So we had a one focus on bridge today for 2.4 million. And that gets us to 238 bridges. And we're about 9.9 million, right around $10 million over budget. That leaves 12 bridges left to go. We're busily trying to get those last 12 going. And this is actually the final month for the state fiscal year 22. So this for the state fiscal year, as Patrick mentioned before, we are running about 11% over budget, or 139 million. And that's on a total of $1.37 billion worth of work. So that's the most amount of work we've done in a fiscal year since 2010. So there's a lot of jobs going out. So
that is amazing. Really amazing. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is an action item. Brenda Morris, Chief Financial Officer, will give us the fiscal year 2023 budget. Brenda.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, Director McKenna. Today, I'm seeking your approval for the fiscal year 2023 budget. The budget I'm presenting today was possible because of the hard work of many employees within Modot. Financial Services is responsible for compiling our submittal and supporting it through the legislative session. Department-wide, we received assistance from divisions and districts as we addressed specific questions and information requests throughout session. Governmental Relations provided assistance in communicating with legislators, and we appreciated the commission in making several legislative visits. Overall, I have good news to share today. The budget I'm presenting totals a little over $3.5 billion and is part of Missouri's roughly $48 billion budget that was passed. I'm going to have a quick overview of the entire budget, and then I'm going to highlight some of the specific actions that the legislature took this year. This puzzle piece graphic shows the three important financial documents the department has. You've seen it before. Each of those documents serves a different purpose, but they all fit together and represent the department's spending plan. The financial forecast was presented to you in January and is the foundation for the other two documents. The Statewide Transportation Improvement Program, or the STIP, it details out the capital and operations plan for the department. The draft STIP was provided to you last month, and staff will seek your approval next month. And today I am presenting to you the budget. This pie graph shows an overview of the department's $3.5 billion budget. Not a big surprise, the largest budget category is program delivery at 63%. But we need to look at the budget just a little closer. Most of our budget is put towards transportation work and projects. This includes not only the funds from program delivery, but also safety and operations, fleet facilities and information systems, and multimodal. The budgeted funds from these areas is 90% of our entire budget. The remaining parts of the budget are for administration and fringe benefits. I'm going to talk about some of the specific actions taken during the legislative session. First, state employees received cost of living adjustments of 2% and 5.5% effective January 1 and March 1, 2022, respectively. The budget includes the continuation of both of these adjustments. While these adjustments are greatly appreciated, they still do not address that many of our employees are being paid well below market, and turnover rates continued at a high result. The commission-approved market adjustment was not included in the budget passed by the General Assembly. In addition, an increase of staffing by 105 positions for the program delivery team to support the larger construction program. As contractor awards increase, more staff is needed to manage and inspect projects. These additional positions will help with that. To put this in context, contractor awards are increasing by 50%, consultant engineering resources by 150%, and staff by 7% for program delivery. Lastly, a benefit has been reinstated, the deferred compensation match. The deferred compensation match program will match employees' contribution to deferred compensation starting at $25 up to $75. Employees will need to contribute at least $25 to participate. This is great news for employees. Safety and operations core budget has not been increased in fiscal year 2018. The budget includes a $5 million increase to help defray the increasing price of roadway materials due to inflation. While this is part, we expect additional adjustments will be needed in the future. We are just not keeping pace in this area. In addition, the fiscal year 2023 budget includes $1 million to help pay for the cost of lodging and meal expense to allow district employees to travel to other districts to help with winter operations. Moving employees around this year was a huge help in successfully managing winter operations, especially when storms only hit a portion of the state. Last month, Eric Curdy presented the draft STIP. As was noted, the draft STIP details $7.69 billion in road and bridge construction contractor awards, averaging approximately $1.5 billion per year. Including engineering and project development costs, the total financial value of the STIP is $9.9 billion. Adding the $100 million for low volume roads brings our capital plan to $10 billion. With construction program increasing, the amount of program delivery was increased by $148 million. These funds will help to pay for the consultants and the contractor payments associated with the larger program. There are a couple of items that were added as part of the governor's recommended budget. The governor recommended and the legislature approved an additional $75 million of new money for the governor's cost share program. Modot worked collaboratively with the Department of Economic Development to create this program that focuses on projects to create an economic benefit. Local entities can apply to fund public road and bridge projects satisfying a transportation need. The governor recommended and the General Assembly approved an additional $100 million for the Governor's Rural Routes Program. This program will target the condition of Missouri's low-volume minor routes. Eric Schrader is going to discuss the department's plan for these monies in the next presentation. Way station locations exist around the state to help support the enforcement of motor carrier regulations. Modot has a plan to improve certain locations and decommission others that are obsolete and underutilized. Our ultimate goal is to concentrate our limited resources on sites with the greatest demand for commercial vehicle enforcement. As part of the appropriations submittal, the department submitted $928,000 for way station improvements. These improvements could include improvements to static scales, decommissioning and converting facilities to truck-only parking, and also funding costs associated with fiscal year 2022 projects that carry over into fiscal year 2023. In addition, the department also submitted budget funds for rest area improvements. Rest areas provide a place for the traveling public to take a break and use facilities. Over time, many of these facilities have started to age. The budget includes $4.2 million to make American with Disabilities Act improvements and to add truck parking to rest areas. The legislature approved several funding items related to multimodal, and I'm going to hit on some of the highlights. First, for transit, the department requested and the General Assembly appropriated $7 million of general revenue for the State Transit Assistance Program. The Missouri State Transit Assistance Program is one of the smallest state programs nationally. These funds will be used for operating assistance to help subsidize operating deficits for public transit agencies throughout the state. This brings the funding for this program back up to the amount experienced in the early 2000s. In addition, the General Assembly appropriated an increase of $2 million for the Missouri Elderly and Handicapped Transit Assistance Program, or METAP. METAP is a state-funded program that provides operating assistance to Missouri's area agencies on aging and governmental and not-for-profit organizations statewide that offer or utilize transportation services for senior citizens and individuals with disabilities. The legislature also appropriated enough general revenue to support twice-daily passenger rail service between St. Louis and Kansas City. Starting in fiscal year 2022, for parts of the year, Missouri has had only one train a day between these two cities to ensure that we stayed within the amounts appropriated. This additional funding will allow Missouri to resume 2 trains a day. Several actions occurred relating to ports. Ports are such an economic generator for the state, and these additional investments will have an economic return. For administration and operating financial assistance, the appropriations were increased by $200,000. The overall program has 2 new ports, so this additional funding will be helpful. In addition, $25 million was added for the Jefferson County Port Authority capital improvement projects to support the container on vessel operations at that location. The department's submittal included an additional $2.3 million from state transportation funds for freight enhancement projects. These projects are non-highway, freight-focused capital improvement projects to increase use of waterways, rail, and air, and remove bottlenecks and improve connections between modes. The state of Missouri has received $2.8 billion in American Rescue Plan Act funding. The appropriation authority was provided to the Office of Administration, but the oversight for the projects will be the responsibility of the department. Essentially, Office of Administration will pay the invoices and will ensure that all the reporting requirements are met while the department oversees the projects. Some of the larger items added included $8.5 million for Modot wastewater improvements, including connections to municipal sewer systems at various Modot maintenance facilities, 1 way station, and 1 rest area, $25 million for grants to port authorities, and a variety of smaller appropriations for various port, rail station, and aviation projects. In addition, $5 million was appropriated for the maintenance and improvements of Jefferson Avenue footbridge in Springfield. We fared well through the legislative budget process this year. The governor, as it was mentioned earlier, the governor still needs to sign all of the budget bills. But today, I am recommending the commission approve the budget as presented, and I would be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brenda. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Boatright.
Brenda, thank you for the work you're doing. I mean, this budget is certainly exciting because we're getting after several items that have been kicked down the road for a period of time and making progress in the right direction. Appreciate you and your team and what it takes to get this done because it's a lot of work, and getting to see the inside of it has been fascinating to say the least. So thank you for the work that you do.
No problem. Thank you.
I move we approve Brenda's recommendation.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Brenda. Nice presentation. Next item on the agenda is an action item. Eric Schroeder, Assistant Chief Engineer, will present about the Governor's Rural Route Funding. Eric?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director. This morning, it's very exciting to come to you to talk about doing additional work. As Mr. McKenna mentioned in his opening remarks, we're already at 9.9 billion, so let's add 100 million onto that and make it an even 10. And this money is available. Now, I have to caution you, we're waiting on one more signature. So I tell my staff and everybody this constantly, until the governor signs it, it's not completely available, but we want to be ready. So what I'm bringing forward to you is the plan to be ready on how to utilize that $100 million targeting Missouri's rural routes. This is similar to 2 years ago, where you see money targeting bridges, the governor's Focus on Bridge program. Travis just gave you an update on that, and we're at 238 bridges now out of 250 in 2 years. What we'd like to demonstrate and what I'm proud of is when you bring the money, we're ready to roll. We can deliver projects. So we want to be able to deliver on this as well. So that's what this plan's about. And that's what my request will be for you in a little bit. So when this money was becoming available, so we've worked with our districts and our planning division and all the information that we have on road condition. We want to target this. This is a very targeted plan. This isn't a shotgun approach of sprinkle a little bit everywhere. We want to target this to improve condition. And to do that, we have to target it on some of our worst ones. And these are also some of the roads that have the least funding opportunities. They're not eligible for federal funds. They require state funding. And they're difficult. It doesn't stretch very far. So we want this to be very targeted. So the information we help provide from our planning to our designers is before you there was looking at that. What are the poorest conditions? So this is a little bit of worst first, but not completely. This is when we have to do a little triage. We got to stop the bleeding in a few places and target this money to make sure this works. The other thing is that we want to be able to group this. We want some contracting efficiency. So we're looking at about 10 to 12 contract bundles here to make this efficient in our contract industry. As I told you, we're out there a little bit. So we've also already had meetings with the contracting industry and said, here's what we're thinking. Here's what we're looking at. What are the industry constraints? So we've already had some of those meetings to get some feedback from them on putting this plan together. So what's before you today in the information, we're looking at about 113 locations and approximately 1,700 lane miles for resurfacing with hot mix asphalt through contractors. Now this would go on top of what we already have. And that's what I was talking about. So what's currently in our STIP and what's in the draft STIP here. So we've talked for a number of years about the importance of this system that we have and how it works. You just heard many pieces on the multimodal piece. Well, the question is, how does that grain get on that barge? Where does it come from that field to that truck to that route to get on that barge to make it to Plaquemine, Louisiana? Well, here's the work that we're doing as a system across this minor and low volume system. And it's impressive. It's $1.2 billion of investment. You know, it's 1,500 lane miles of resurfacing. It's 546 bridges. Unfortunately, we have to tell people you can drive on a poor road, but you can't drive on a closed bridge. Those bridges are critical. And when you have 10,400 of them, that's a lot to take care of. And that's just on the minor route system. When we go to that low volume, that next step down, it's another 3,200 miles of pavement work, $169 million in investment, and another 239 bridges. This all works together with all this put together, what's in our current STIP, what's in the draft STIP, we're looking at $1.9 billion of investment in this part of the system, which is a tremendous improvement. bigger than we've ever had in my career time. And it's targeted and it's strategic. This is where our asset management plan has come in, that we're targeting routes based on our asset management plan to use the best resources to make them go as far as we can and to keep the system going. This is the benefit of doing that. So this is what it looks like on a map. When you put all, it's impressive that we're able to cover those areas. Now this is over, you got to have some patience. The STIP's a 5-year plan. So this is what's the next 5 coming. So over time, this is where those resources will be targeted. Now that's also a lot of work for our contracting industry. Travis was just in front of you telling you 1.3 billion is the largest we've done in almost 10 years. Well, next year I need to do 1.5 billion. And I need to average 120 million every month. No months off. Don't get summer vacation, don't get Christmas vacation. 120 million a month contracting is part of this, to deliver this. So it's a huge boost to our economy, to our partners in the consulting and contracting business. It's a huge boost to the users of the system. But there's also going to be a little inconvenience along here. I can't work on all these roads and not inconvenience somebody. Those bridges is often closed for 60, 90 days while we do it. We know that's an inconvenience, but the benefit is tremendous. But as we go up to doing $1.5 billion worth of work a year, that inconvenience goes up a little bit. That's part of the trade-off here for improving and maintaining the system. So what I'm requesting of you this morning is to approve a modification to the STIP, to add these projects specifically to the STIP, to the 22-26 STIP. The list you have in front of you is by project. It also has the routes on there, so I won't belabor and read through 113 of them. But I would ask your approval to add these so that we can be ready when the governor signs the budget, that I would go out for contracts in June, advertise them, July, open bids, and in August, be back to you for approval and letting work begin.
Thank you, Eric. Does anyone have any
Now,
questions?
take any questions you may have.
Comments for Eric?
Yeah, Eric, this is an exciting development for the out-state people that use the low volume roads. Something I've been very vocal about my tenure on the commission, and it's just exciting that we're finally at a point where we have the funding that we can make a significant change on the condition of our low volume roads.
Yeah, and it's exciting, as we speak, our staff is working on contracts and plans for this to have that ready to roll. So it's exciting for them as well, because our staff wants to take care of everything the best they can, and the limit and constraint on resources can be frustrating for everybody involved. So this being able to tackle some of those things that they know needs to be done is exciting for them too.
Right, and the Modot employees that are working on those low volume roads out in the county, it's exciting to them too, because it's no fault of theirs that they haven't had the resources to do the job that they know needs to be done.
Yeah.
And so with that, I'd like to make the motion to accept this approval.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. This motion carries. Patrick, do you have any comments?
I do.
Thank you, sir. They keep cutting you out, but I'm going to bring you back in.
That's okay. That's okay. This is really significant, but specific to the $100 million infusion, with the governor's support, with the commission's support, with the General Assembly's support. But we didn't know about this really until the last day of session, close to the last day of session. It came through conference committee. I want to thank Senator Hegeman, the Appropriations Committee Chairman, and recognize him for his leadership here, because in the budget process, there was a switch of source of funds that would have effectively denuded this, that kind of came through the House. And Senator Hegeman stood ground and went back and had the Senate stand on the governor's recommendation. So this is new money. This does not affect any of the other projects in the STIP. This is a new source of funds. And when you couple this together, consider when virtually everyone on this commission started on this commission, we had literally $300 million a year to work with on a infrastructure that has a replacement cost right now of about $165 billion. So little wonder why some of our conditions were not up to par and continue in that. We are now at a position where we're funded at about 1% of the replacement value in terms of the program that we're putting out here. And I will say that, you know, a 5-year STIP in 2016 that was valued at $1.6 billion and a minor and rural route and bridge program in this STIP as a component that is valued at $2 billion. I'm going to round it up to $2 billion. It's extraordinary. This is probably since the building of the infrastructure itself, it's the largest investment in reinvestment, in reconnecting Missourians, you know, probably since the 1950s. And so the leadership of the commission here has been steadfast, very pointed and very direct, and that's exactly what was required to get to this point. It's a huge benefit, but on this $100 million one, so not knowing that it was coming and then having it come, I came up as frequently happens and had a conversation with our team and said, you know, because look, construction industry capacity is stretched. And we said, this needs to move very quickly because this is single fiscal year money. And so the team came up with literally in a matter of hours and days, a plan to bring to advertisement in June. Okay, we're waiting for the signature on the budget bill. Of course, that's the final step. But as soon as that comes out, we can go out to advertisement, being prepared for that. Going out for RFPs in July, having the commission consider the contracts in August. And the hope is to have asphalt start moving in this fall. This is as fast as it gets in DOTs anywhere. And that's on top of everything else this team has been tasked with doing. I'm impressed. I'm always impressed with our team, but I'm especially impressed here. And this work is just so vital. And particularly, you know, you think about this, this is nearly 500 bridges. This is, you know, this is a big deal all across Missouri. And there isn't a part of the state that isn't touched here with this investment. And this is just, if Eric put this map up and then added the rest of the STIP, you wouldn't see any open space on the map at all. We are carpet bombing the state with exactly what it needs, which is the resources that Missourians have provided to us to do this very work. And the cycle time here, I would argue, is the fastest of any DOT in the country by probably 2 years. And we are moving as quickly as we can to reap the benefit. And particularly as prices are escalating, no time like the present. I think many of the commissioners have in one way or another have expressed to me from their own businesses since I've been here that Modot's on the now plan. Get it done now. And that's that right here, right now. Yeah, it's the now plan and it's right now. This is right now. We're really pleased by this, and it's extraordinary teamwork, but it's also all the way through the support from policymakers, the support from the governor, the support from the commission, General Assembly. This is the payback to the citizens, and it's going to be happening continually over the next several years. So we're really excited about it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Commissioner Waters. You know, a few years ago, we were in Kansas City and we had just approved the replacement of the Washington Bridge. If you remember that. And Sandy Lucy, the mayor of Washington, was in the crowd. And when we made that vote, she yippee, she yelled yippee. I mean, she was happy. And I'm just as happy as Sandy today. So thank you, Eric.
Appreciate that.
Mr. Boatright.
You know, these low volume routes, when you think back to the history of the department and to their importance to the state overall, I mean, this is our foundation. These routes are fundamental to our state's GDP and really the start of where we're coming out of our fields and we're putting those commodities throughout the globe. And for the investment from, for the governor to recognize that, for the legislature to recognize that is a really big deal. And it's an exciting time to be on the commission and to be a part of this, because this investment's going to make a difference moving forward, and how effective and how productive our state is. So thank you, Eric, and you and your team for the
I'll
work you've
pass
done
that
on
along.
this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We voted on that, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is an action item. Cheryl Ball is providing a presentation on the Supply Chain Task Force. Cheryl, welcome again.
Question, do you want to do the supply chain task force first or the state freight and rail plan? I have two action items for you.
Mine says task force, but you can pick.
I think state freight and rail plan was up on the master list. That's
Okay.
why I asked this question.
Oh, you know what? I skipped it.
It's okay. I just want to make sure I followed your orders. Hello again, gentlemen. Sorry about the questioning. Good morning again. For the past 2 years, Modot has been working on the state freight and rail plan. During the development, we incorporated the MPOs, the RPCs, and the stakeholders such as the businesses in the development of this plan. So it took a little longer than we normally would. I had a little thing called pandemic in place, so we had some scrambling of how to get input incorporated in that. On March 1st, we brought you the draft state freight and rail plan and opened the public comment period. We ran that comment period through the end of March. We received 243 comments on that. So I think that's a good number considering the level of public engagement with our stakeholders that we had prior to that. The freight comments, we didn't have a great deal on the freight section because if you may recall, the plan was separated into a freight section, and then we also had passenger rail as part of the rail plan. But some of the things that we heard about from the freight plan commentary was a need for more intermodal connections. Those are the places where the modes connect: rail to barge, rail to truck, truck to barge, that airplane to truck, things of that nature. Supported increased funding for their cost share program. We saw some increase just a few minutes ago in some of our earlier presentations, but there was a strong support for continued cost share engagement. The other public comments that we received were highlights of some important critical routes throughout the state, such as Route 60, 61, 36, and 67 in those parts of the states. All of those comments really were represented well in our strategic plan and our goals that were part of this plan. So no modifications were made to the plan based upon those. We did receive questions, however, on the corridor demand map, which is the maps that you see on the displays over here. And some of those were, are those really some of the routes? Because there were a few of them that maybe looked like we were anticipating more traffic than what folks were observing. And possibly that would just escalate as we went forward to make sure we really had the right direction there. We went back and re-examined some of the assumptions that were made in the underlying model. And those assumptions include, we know traffic is here, which direction do we think they will go? What is driving those forces? So we made some really deeper dive into those to make sure that those modifications, or make sure that those assumptions seemed accurate, seemed to reflect what we were seeing on the ground at the time, things of that nature. Based upon those comments, we did make modifications to the maps that you see on the board now. The biggest change you will see is on Route 60 across the southern part of our state, and on 170 coming out of the airport down inside the St. Louis area. We believe that the initial maps overestimated the amount of traffic that was currently on those and that we would anticipate in the future. So we have modified those two maps to reflect what we believe is a better model for those things coming through the future. The majority of our comments, 219 out of those 243, actually were related to passenger rail. We had 106 that supported expansion of our passenger rail. We found that that was a very popular topic. They were asking for things that you may see on the map here as well. supported our expansion to Branson, to Springfield, to Hannibal, and asked us not just to stop at St. Joe, go all the way to Omaha. That's where they wanted to connect with those other routes that are national routes. We had 75 comments that also supported our River Runner, which is the one from St. Louis to Kansas City, that state-supported route. And they wanted that increased to 2 routes because at the time the comments were being taken, as Brenda said earlier, we were at 1 route a day. But we had several comments that asked us to increase that to 3, 4, 5 a day. They really want an expansion of that. A lot of folks were asking to do that as a way to take day trips. They're looking to take day trips into the cities, St. Louis or Kansas City, taking a ball game, taking at the Muni, taking the zoo, things like that, and be able to come back to other parts of the state throughout the day. And we also saw a lot of folks looking for commuter rail. We saw just a lot of expansion, and I think that's a reflection both of our aging population within our state, that folks are maybe not wanting to own as many cars, they're seeing the congestion, or in some folks just from an environmental reason, they just want to drive and have those connections. All of these comments actually also supported our state freight and rail plan strategies and goals, and so we didn't make any modifications to the plan reflected upon that. Many comments requested a stop in New Haven, which is just outside of St. Louis. We had some of those, and that implementation, as I said, of commuter rail. These comments I passed along to our rail team to ask them if that is something that is feasible and under consideration, and let them have some conversations with Amtrak to see if there was something along those lines. Our rail team that handles the River Runner is also integral in working with the metro areas with their light rail, with the streetcars, things of that nature, to see if there's something that would better reflect the commuter rail. But we did see a bigger uptick in asking for those things. We did not make comments and changes based on those comments, but are looking at them internally further. We did have 2 comments that opposed all governmental support for passenger rail. So I was actually pretty excited. I only saw 2. So we'll go with that. I think overwhelmingly people loved passenger rail. They want it expanded. They'd like to see us do more of it if we can. And I think the increase in funding that we saw this year in the legislature, we hope to see that continue in the future. Based on that, the plan that you saw in March was only modified slightly, as I told you, on the maps that we saw earlier. And I am requesting that the commission approve this plan as the final state freight and rail plan for the state of Missouri. When you approve this, we will be able to submit it to Federal Highway and to Federal Rail for approval to continue moving along and implementation of all those projects that are in the STIP related to it.
Great, thank
And
you.
I'm open for questions.
Any discussion during presentation? Patrick, comments?
I'd note that Cheryl and the team had to pivot with the passage of the infrastructure bill in November, because that added some additional requirements here. So the timing was actually good, but it added some additional burden.
Yes.
And Cheryl did a very good job of adjusting to that, incorporating that into this plan. The timing also, just, a little bit of a nod to the supply chain task force. Timing couldn't have been better with that. And I'm really pleased that Cheryl's presenting both of these, because Cheryl has been burdened with the majority of the work. She asked, do you want me to present you're a task force member on supply chain? And I said, well, it would be appropriate, reflective of the burden that Cheryl has carried on this, and her team, Liz Presswood, again, Dana Kaiser, all of our team has worked very hard on these. This is going to be a roadmap for us for several years in directing the resources, targeting the investments. It's a forward-looking plan. I'm really pleased with the results of it, and I just want to compliment you, Cheryl, for your work and for your team's work and working with Cambridge Systematics and putting that together, incorporating feedback that came on looking at and doing kind of a review of the traffic volumes and things like that. That's also a hard thing to do in the middle of the plan itself. So they did a tremendous job of incorporating comments and improving the plan along the way. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Boatright?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cheryl, thank you. You know, I know during this process, I kind of picked your brain a lot of different times, and I really appreciate you and your team looking into some of the items that I pointed out. And the finished product is something that's certainly exciting for the commission and exciting for Missouri moving forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the comments, by the way.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I move we approve the 2022 state freight and rail plan.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That motion carried. Cheryl, you're up again.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for the approval. The next item on the agenda is the Missouri State Supply Chain Task Force. And this has been a really exciting project to work on. I've been with the department many, many years, more than I wish to tell you about. But this is one of the things that really kind of brought a lot of the things that I've learned through the years and opened my eyes to some areas that I had no knowledge of. And so I think it's been a really good project, and I was thrilled that Director McKenna asked me to work on the project. So first of all, I wanted to say thank you for that. Supply chain is the process where raw materials become finished materials and then make it to market or to your homes or to wherever the final consumer is. Like many things, as long as it's working well, just like our highways, people accept that they're working well. We start diverting things, things start getting broken, people notice and they are not happy. What happens when the supply chain breaks is that shelves are empty, manufacturers close, and prices climb rapidly. So these are all very negative things for us as both consumers and as public officials. 2022 or 2020, sorry. You may recall those shortages of paper products, sanitation, masks, ventilators, PPE. All of us were scrambling to find all of those products. The supply chain broke. And that condition has continued since then. We have not seen a relief. There was it over, but we've seen more and more things happen. The reasons may have changed. COVID outbreaks have happened at manufacturers, both here and abroad. There was a surge in e-commerce orders. There was changes in demand as many consumers were quarantined at home, and it became very easy to do e-shopping or delivery. And so we saw a lot of different things coming in different methods. And there was overwhelmed the container ports at our coastal lines. Those all reflect that broken supply chain. The pandemic accelerated that. We think that we would have probably seen this throughout the years and may have been able to adapt slowly, but it really showed us those breaks and made it happen in about 6, 12, and 18 months. So we saw those breaks. Looking at the national supply chain, and there was a lot of concern from the governors, Governor Parson created a supply chain task force back in November of 2021 and said, please take a look at this. I'm appointing Director McKenna and Dr. Marty Leathers, the director at Workforce Development over at Higher Education and Workforce Development, and said, please look at all the issues and see what we can do to mitigate and minimize the impacts to Missourians and Missouri businesses both. Our task force, co-chaired as I noted earlier, also included 5 private sector folks, which I think was good, and they had different expertise in the supply chain. We had Dustin Quisenberry from CFI Trucking, Todd Spencer from OIDA, which is the Independent Truck Drivers Association, Chris Gutierrez from Smartport in Kansas City, Mary Lamey, who you heard from earlier with Bi-State and St. Louis Freightway, and Caitlin Murphy, who is also here from the St. Louis area, and she is the CEO of Global Logistics here in St. Louis, and they do third-party shipping overseas with small and medium businesses. So her expertise kind of in the trenches helped us as well. Their objective was to develop recommendations to supply to Governor Parson by June 30th to minimize that disruption. We undertook a process similar to with a lot of what you do and what we do with the STIP and others. We pulled upon our expertise and experience in other projects. We held 7 meetings around the state. Those were public meetings. They saw over 30 presentations at these meetings from different industries, different modal factors, and anyone who wanted to come forward just had to let us know they wanted to talk, and we let them speak. They were open to the public, they were live streamed, and they're also still available on demand. So we tried to make it as open and transparent as process as possible.
Cheryl, if I can note,
Mhm.
just noting the picture here, Mr. Chairman, is it okay if I use your seat?
Yeah.
I thought you looked good there.
Okay, we're good. The draft final report summarized the key information that we pulled, a lot of it from the State Freight and Rail Plan, as Director McKenna noted earlier. The findings of how that all came together, and also provided some recommended solutions. The presentations really categorized into 4 themes when we looked back at all of them and tried to piece them together to see how to pull together a report. We saw trucking challenges. Those includes driver shortages, emergency response. What do we do when trucking is stuck in a traffic jam due to a crash or as part of the crash, or there's weather related? What are we going to do there? Truck parking. You all have heard us speak earlier within the State Freight and Rail Plan discussions about the need for truck parking. We are completely under capacity at that all over the state. The lack of the first and last mile rail investment, short line rail, and those rail accesses into industries and to businesses really have no funding source, or I should say they have a small funding source. We have Brenda spoke that we have about $3.25 million each year for non-highway freight related options. And that'll build you about half of one of those. So it's really a small pot of funds, and that was brought forth to us as well as an issue. Trained available workforce. This is where I spoke earlier. I did a lot of learning on this. Learned a lot about training that is needed and how difficult it is sometimes to get that training, and what the state of Missouri is doing already that maybe we need to market better. Some transportation challenges getting workers from where they live to where we need them to be at different facilities. Childcare, especially in those second and third shifts, there is no such thing. And there's a map within the report that actually shows some counties in our state have 1 or 2 providers for the entire county of childcare. So that is a huge issue for many parents, grandparents who have those children, and housing is a big issue. The fourth thing was opportunities. You've heard this morning already about container on vessel and container on barge. That did come up throughout those presentations. And we talked a lot about the chassis and containers. There was a shortage of those on the East and West Coast, which contributed somewhat to those 100 ship backups we keep hearing about on the news. That is not lost upon us as we embark on greater adventures with container on vessels and container on barge and our rail issues. When those containers are stuck on the coast, they are not coming to the Midwest. So those definitely impact us. The graphic that you see up here is one that I found very fascinating and will be filing somewhere in my office to pull out on numerous occasions, I'm sure. It was given to us by the Missouri Partnership as part of their presentation, and it was really broken into the 4 or 5 types of groups that they normally look at to recruit into Missouri, and these are what they see as the decision factors. And so that informed our task force as well of not only the businesses here, because this is what allows businesses to stay there, be profitable, expand, and or attracts them. So we look at those as part of this as well. There we go. The draft final report recommendations were grouped into 3 categories. In the next 3 slides, I'm going to highlight some of the recommendations that were included based in those 3. As I noted earlier, truck driver shortages are a frequent topic in the freight circles, workforce circles, and for the past year or so, frankly, in the media. Every time I turn the media on, somebody's telling me about truck driver shortages and why products are not getting where they're going to. There's a good reason truck driver shortage is such a big issue. Most products travel at least a portion of the from raw materials to the consumer on a truck. Somewhere along the way, they're on a truck, whether it's the very first and last mile or somewhere in between. And not enough drivers reduces that capacity and drives the price of goods up. Our goals that we developed in the recommendations are to expand the pool of available drivers, get them into the driver's seat more efficiently, and use existing resources more efficiently. We found some areas that there could be some efficient use of the existing drivers that's frustrating the drivers, causing them to not have as good of wages because of the wait times at some locations. And the trucking industry thinks they can be part of that solution. So that was a good piece. So those recommendations, including expanding access to the CDL program in rural Missouri, leverage some of the resources, both public and private. We don't have, right now you have to travel to those schools, or there's a lot of information that you cannot do if you're rural. You have to find transportation to that school. So looking to leverage and expand that. This is the one that was most exciting to me at the moment, is developing a rating system for some preferred facilities. And this actually came from, generated as an idea from Dustin Quisenberry at CFI, Todd Spencer at OIDA. This kind of came through that source. And it is looking at, is there a way that we could encourage private facilities to provide that overnight trucking, to provide restrooms for our drivers, to provide a way that our drivers could be guaranteed 2-hour turnaround time. This would improve the efficiency of use of those drivers' time, and as essence would increase our capacity of truck drivers without actually increasing the drivers. So they're willing to work on that as a way to develop some type of preferred facility and offer benefits to the facilities for doing so. So I'm excited to see that idea take forth as this progresses. They're looking, one of those is to provide waivers for divisible load restrictions to allow increased weights that would use less drivers. And fourth, one near and dear to my heart, I will tell you now, is provide a waterways trust fund to allow multi-fiscal year construction. Currently, we have one fiscal year because of the appropriation process for port projects that are state investments to go from approval on July 1st, construction, build out, and are ready to go by June 15th of the following year. And it's driving up costs. The contractors have to bid in the water and take into weather account and just have to get it done. So it's driving costs up. In addition to the specific capital improvements identified in the State Freight and Rail Plan, there's a number of other targeted investments, and many of those really focused on the grants, loans, and tax benefits for non-roadway freight. We have some benefits, or we have some mechanisms that we can use to get some roadway improvements, but it's the non-roadway that are really challenging for Missouri to figure out how to help subsidize in any capacity. Short line rail infrastructure, that first and last mile rail, looking at tax credits. There are other states that are providing some tax credits to short line investments to encourage reinvestment, establishing a program for rail similar to what Kansas and Nebraska have. They are implementing about $10 million a year in grants and loan programs to invest in short line and those access rails we spoke of earlier. We would like, one of the recommendations is to actually create a container and chassis manufacturing industry here in the state. The whole nation needs more chassis and more containers. This would be a great opportunity for us centrally located to provide those supplies and develop a multimodal economic development grant opportunity. We have one of those with the Road and Bridge Cost Share Program. They would like us to look at as a state doing that in multimodal capacities. The part that I think was the biggest learning opportunity for myself and frankly for all of us who are on the transportation side of the world was the one related to workforce needs. I never really thought about it. I've been very blessed. But right now, you need available workforce to be able to get your supply chain. We need people in the warehouse. We need people in the manufacturing. We need operators for trains, trucks, rail, water vessels, and airports. There are multiple issues contributing in the state of Missouri as to what are keeping some readily proposed employees out of the workforce. And some of those that were highlighted in this report included workforce readiness, encouraging some worker-based learning, on-the-job training, and apprenticeships for skilled trades. Those with the right support could also happen where the workers would be ready right out of high school to enter those activities. Establishing a accelerated credentials to employment. Some of the things that were tossed around and are included in this recommendation gives credit for military service that you've already provided towards hours of training. So that reduces the number of training hours and gets you on the road or on the whatever first already. Incentives for on-site childcare. Is there an incentive that we can help to provide to some of the industries as a state, whether it be tax credits, grants, whatever? Is there some incentive that could be provided that would encourage some of the large employers to provide some on-site childcare? That helps get workers one less thing that they have to worry about in a day, and tends to make those workers frankly more dedicated to that first because they've got childcare happening right there. Housing. As many of you are aware, we hear about it on the media as well, that right now the housing market to purchase it is, if you want, it's a seller's market. There is, you can ask any price and it's selling in about a week. Rental is the same way. There's just not a lot of rental property out there. So the Missouri Housing Development Commission actually has some programs that we were unaware of, and we think part of that as a supply chain task force is maybe marketing that more to some of our freight suppliers and manufacturers, letting them know there's programs, for instance, they can contribute money to a list of charitable groups. They get a tax credit back for doing that, and the charitable group builds the housing. So there's some incentive programs that are already in existence like that we think a lot of the freight groups just have no idea that those are existence. There's also some grant programs to encourage connections between workforce readiness and some of those. So some of that is marketing, some of those is maybe expanding or modifying those programs a little, but there's a lot of opportunity there that we just really haven't explored yet as a state. So connecting those dots, I think, would be a good piece. And finally, transportation. In many parts, mostly in our rural or small cities, we don't have the transit and frankly don't have a lot of the rideshare companies like Uber and Lyft. We just don't have those outside of your major metropolitan areas. And so your transit services run 9 to 5. That's not supportive of a lot of the manufacturing jobs or a lot of the warehousing jobs that run 24/7. We just don't have an opportunity. So there are some programs that have been successful in other parts of the country that are included in this report as maybe recommendations for us to pursue. Transit running 2 and 3 days a week would not support employment. So we have more transit money than we've had since 2001, but there is a greater need, and the Missouri Transit Association actually is just completing a report looking at those transit needs and where the services are. And I think that'll be a good supplement to this. That should be finished in the near future. So that is happening. Getting products to market requires that efficient, reliable, and available supply chain. It's infrastructure and workforce. Those are both the pieces that are required, and they have to be there. For the last few months, many companies have come forth to our task force to identify the broken pieces and offered some very good recommended solutions for consideration by the task force. The task force used all this information and their own knowledge of the supply chain elements to develop the draft supply chain task force report. It will be available starting tomorrow online at this website for public comment through June 17th. At that time, all comments received will be sent to our task force members for consideration, and we anticipate having the final report available for presentation to the governor by the end of this month. So thank you so much, and I'll open for any questions or comments.
Any comments?
Thank you, Cheryl. It's a very nice presentation. Thank you, Patrick and and Dr. Leathers for stepping up and on this important topic. It's important, very important. It affects every Missourian, everybody in the United States. Everybody's been affected by it, and the draft port will give the public a chance to comment on it. Be interesting to see what the comments are, and then you'll make your recommendations. And we appreciate your hard work to get this to the governor. And we all know how Gov 57 workforce development is his hammer, you know.
And infrastructure.
And infrastructure, yes, I'm sorry. Sorry, yes. And
Don't forget infrastructure.
Right, that's right. Yeah, that's true. That's right. But anyway, we appreciate your all's hard work on it very, very much.
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, I think, and I want to thank Mary Lamey, who's here, and our other task force members really brought their expertise to bear. It's been a fascinating process. It was timely for the governor to sign the executive order and to put this in place, and for the commission's support. But I think really, you know, we're at this point where we're finalizing. The challenge for us is to not let this collect dust, is to take action on it. And I think this is going to be a really fertile ground for us as a department to bring forward to the commission for consideration policy proposals for working through the public process with the General Assembly, with our transportation committees in the House and the Senate, and with the governor in the coming years, similar to what happened with the legislatively adopted and appointed 21st Century Transportation Task Force several years ago. That really set the groundwork for the policy work that led to the gas tax increase. And I think we can use that as a model to take action here, not just to study the issue. It's good to have that baseline of data so that we can target some investments. But this is really about so many of these pieces fitting together and creating a more resilient structure here in Missouri, so that we can anticipate that there will be additional disruptions in the future. We can't anticipate what or when, but if we build more resilience into our infrastructure and our workforce and look at these things as a kind of a network approach, we'll be in a better position to deal with those variabilities over the coming years. So very good baseline work here, but the benefit really is, what do we do with it? And that's next. So, thank you.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, I had a quick question. Talked a lot about like truck driver shortage and different things. Was there any discussion about the new CDL regulations for drivers to get?
There was quite a bit of discussion about that. We saw, we had a presentation actually from Dr. Leathers, presented a lot about the new CDL rules and the training requirements, and how some of those were being able to, some of the larger companies are taking those on. They're hiring the trainers and doing the training themselves. And where we really see probably some of the challenges are going to be is those members of the OIDA, those smaller independent trucking, 4 or 5 trucks, those types of areas, trying to find a way that we can partner with them through workforce development and through some of our other existing training programs, to make sure that they aren't left out in that process. I think the regulations that were passed a few years ago with hours of service and the electronic logs really brought to the surface pretty quickly some of the challenges of where we were short at and how we were short at. And then through the pandemic, the prices that when you had fewer drivers and so many people retiring, and some of the things that were highlighted in the report, as well as the national discussion going on related to legalization of marijuana and medical marijuana, and how that is impacting the national, where it's not a federal policy and people are testing positive, and what happens after they get treated and then back into the workplace has some implications as well. So that was covered in there, a lot of it. And I think that when we spoke, and I think that Dr. Leather's department is really trying to get a good handle on that and work with those companies to do that.
Yeah, that's the challenge I hear of the independent truckers, that the rules to get and the cost to get a CDL is prohibitive to a lot of people.
Exactly. And that was brought up. And I think that workforce development is really very well aware of that. And I was really excited because what we saw is CFI, which is a very large trucking company. So we saw Dustin and Todd Spencer at OIDA really kind of brainstorming, and Tom Crawford at Missouri Trucking Association. We saw the three of them working together saying, what can we do? How do we do this? And some of the recommendations that you'll see in that report as well talked about offering some additional virtual learning on how do we do some support in that to try and reduce some of those costs.
Thank you.
Thanks. I have a couple comments. After the meeting, I'd like to understand more about the preferred facilities. But I will tell you, 45 years ago, I thought I built my last warehouse. And all of a sudden, they were 150,000 foot buildings.
That's right.
And they were huge. And between us and Arco and Clayco's and all the construction company, we're building millions of square feet every day. And there are a million, I'd say over half of them are over 1 million square feet. So this is, it's not a fad.
That's right. That's
This
right.
is, and we believe that that runway is another 3 or 4 years long until that reaches capacity. So my one question is, are you working with developers so that they understand that maybe they can put the child care into these facilities? Because they don't know who's going to go in there, but there's 1 million square feet. There's going to be some people there. So I'd be happy to put you in touch with 2 or 3 of the larger ones in the country that we're dealing with. And then the other question, this is our task force, or do we coordinate with Kansas and Illinois and other states? Is there a big task force group in the sky somewhere?
There were several governors that signed on to kind of looking at this on a broader basis.
Mm-hmm.
We certainly reached out to the surrounding states, but we're really, the focus of this was Missouri centric, but we recognize that, you know, you can't just solve it in one place and think it's solved. The whole thing has to connect together. We have received a lot of interest, even at the federal level, for the work that we're doing here. And this report is going to circulate well throughout the country.
Yeah, there's a lot of good ideas here. My last comment on CDLs, Fort Leonard Woods got 10 missions. The one, the second or biggest is to train truck drivers.
Right.
I don't know if you have a source there, but those guys coming out of the service might be a source for those drivers. So this is an action item. Do I have a motion? And a second?
Second.
And moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Another motion carried for you, Cheryl. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, good news is you won't see me anymore.
Okay.
Thank you. I was like, I don't know. I knocked the thing off.
Next item on the agenda is a non-action item. Jerica Holtzclaw, Motor Carrier Services Director, is providing presentation on the Motor Carrier Services Division.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners,
Morning.
Director McKenna. I'm Jerica Holtzclaw, the Director of Motor Carrier Services Division. It's my pleasure today to showcase the employees of the Motor Carrier Services Division and give you an update of what's going on in the division. Okay, so the division's, just a reminder, is made up of 83 employees. We have 2 sides of the house. We have the Communication Compliance Center, where we do registrations, collect fuel taxes, issue those oversized load permits, et cetera. And then we have our Safety and Compliance section, where we ensure those safe operations around the state. So listed on the screen are the 8 overall programs that Motor Carrier Services manages. But I wanted to point out that we are a one-stop shop, meaning folks come to us carriers to get all their paperwork done. A lot of states are not set up like this, and this is a huge benefit to Missouri carriers and something we're proud to offer them. In turn, it is a lot for our employees to know on the backside of that, but it's something we're proud to offer to our 17 to 20,000 customers that we service every year. So last year when I came here in June of last year to give you an update on the division. I did a bit of a deeper dive in some of these programs, and this year I'm just going to give an update of what's going on in the division. So in our safety and compliance section, these employees encourage compliance with state statutes and federal regulations. They also perform what's called new entrant safety audits. and guide and educate carriers from the beginning of their brand new business. They also perform vehicle inspections and do full-on carrier investigations. During the winter months, these employees join other safety-sensitive employees at Modot in plowing snow. Along with most other states, though, we're finding it very challenging to keep up with the federal safety audits due to the influx of work during the pandemic. From 2020 to 2021, people coming to us to open a brand new account rose 76%. And so far this year, that trend is staying, and in fact, it has risen even more. We are hearing from carriers that they plan to drive for Amazon, and that's a big reason for the influx of our work. According to KY3 News out of Springfield, Missouri, Amazon has 15 facilities in our state, and 4 of which are like their mega centers or fulfillment centers. So we're currently serving on a nationwide team in effort to determine the best way to catch up with our federal safety audits moving forward. Okay, so the other side of the house is our Compliance Communication Center, again, where we do fuel tax reporting and collections with carriers, their registrations, and the oversized loads permits. Missouri does rank 10 out of 59 jurisdictions in the number of power units or trucks that are registered with us. We have 68,000 power units or trucks that are registered with us, and we do believe that one-stop shop setup is a big reason for that ranking for us. Just an update, over the winter months in our registration section, we had as much as a 50% vacancy rate for employees in that section. And not really hardly getting any interest in the jobs, especially in the Jefferson City area. So this, along with the increasing amount of people coming to us, open up new accounts, we found ourselves with the need to stabilize this unit a bit. So thanks to Director McKenna and the executive team for coming up with the idea to shift some of our motor carrier resources to some rural parts of the state to see if we could get interest in that. We selected the Northeast District locations of Hannibal and Kirksville, and so far we've had a really good response with that and able to fill our vacancy. So thank you to Director McKenna and the executive team for that idea. But just so you know, our full service location will still remain in Jefferson City, where we have that customer face-to-face window. Those employees located in the satellite offices will be mainly doing the behind-the-scenes transactional type work. So that's an update from that. Okay, so here's some more exciting news. I know I mentioned it to Commissioner Smith off the side before we started this today. So I talked about our increased workload due to influx of new carriers coming into the trucking industry. With that comes added revenue for us as we collect fees from all the programs that we manage. We typically collect over $200 million per year and get to keep about 100 million or half, 100 million of that or so. And the other half goes to the other jurisdictions based on the miles that the truckers drive in those jurisdictions. So this chart shows the trend and increased revenue that we have collected. We haven't quite made it through the fourth quarter of this year, but you can clearly see the trend is growing with the growth in the trucking industry. We'll likely hit the 120 million mark that we're depositing into the road fund. And from 2017 to 2021, that's about a 35% increase in revenue that we're collecting. So that's pretty good news on that front. Okay, so here's our new online system. I talked about it last year when I came to you all and said, we're gonna have a new online system. It went live in February. There was a few reasons why we had to go with this new online system. The first reason, it was 15 years old. So, you know, in technology world, that's pretty old. The second is we could no longer receive updates and it was a security risk for us. And the financial portion related to the old system was no longer supported. The biggest benefits from the new system, it's more transparent to our customers, our carriers, so they can upload their transactions directly or their documents directly to the system and kind of see the status of it. Instead of calling and just saying, did you get my information? It's right at their fingertips with this new online system. So that's a benefit to our carriers. But I will tell you, as with change is hard. We knew our customers anticipated they might be a little bit apprehensive about this. We do have 17 to 20,000 customers to try to bring along with us in this new system. So we created multiple how-to videos and webinars to share with all of our carriers that are and the online tutorials that are 5 minutes or less, so they can how to add a vehicle. They can go watch a 5-minute video on how to do that themselves. And we've also hosted numerous webinars to, just to make them a little bit more comfortable with this system. We've also experienced the time that we spend on phone calls with our carriers has increased a bit because we're trying to walk them through how to use this new system. So that in time has pushed our hold time up a bit. However, we're taking each phone call as they come in and giving them the time and attention that they need to walk them through the system. But we keep telling folks that go look at our webinars and tutorial videos because they're pretty straightforward and clear, and they can figure that out on their own as well as an option for them. With the new staff we recently hired in those satellite offices of Kirksville and Hannibal and in Jefferson City, we're ramping up our training, kind of doubling down on training with that new staff to prepare for our busiest time of year, which is typically September through January. So we're preparing for that influx of work. December is usually our biggest renewal quarter out of the entire year. So we're preparing for that because that'll be the first time those December folks have used the new system too. So trying to make sure all of our staff is trained and prepared for that quarter. That's our biggest quarter. I also want to give a shout out now to Linda Horn and the communications team that she manages. They've actually taken our website, not the online system, but the website itself, and is really trying to simplify it. There's so much information out there for carriers, it's kind of overwhelming. So Linda's team is taking that and making it very simple for our carriers to understand. So thank you to Linda and the CR team for doing that. So moving on to winter weather. I already mentioned that staff do plow snow in the winter, but we also have motor carrier staff who actually team up with the traffic management centers and the CR division during winter events. Messages specifically for the commercial motor vehicles that are out there on the roadways. Our best way of communicating to the drivers is really through those roadside message boards that are out there while they're on the highway. We also send out blast emails to carriers or those trucking companies in hopes that they'll notify their drivers as well. During last winter season, we did collaborate with surrounding states to ensure messages were consistent and recognizable state to state to help alleviate confusion to those cross-country drivers that are coming through. And the last thing I wanted to share today with you is the list of partners that we typically work with in our division. You can see we work with the patrol, associations, our federal partners, and we collaborate on many topics. One of the things is what Cheryl talked about, the supply chain crisis, winter events, such things as our new online system, trying to get the word out there about our videos, working with the Trucking Association to get that information out to our carriers. We also work really closely with divisions in our districts. So I wanted to end today to say really how proud I am of the motor carrier staff who have worked really hard to service this industry, even at parts where we were only 50% staffed at the very same time that we were going live with a brand new online system. Their hard work and dedication is certainly worth noting and celebrating. So with that, do you have any questions about the motor carrier division?
No question, just kind of a comment. Did you say 72? No, I'm sorry. No questions, just a comment. And a question. Did you say a 72% increase?
76% increase in new accounts.
That's amazing.
What are the
Well,
new
thank you
accounts?
for your hard work. We appreciate it.
The new accounts is a new trucking company coming?
Yeah, a person, an independent driver, it could be that too, come in to get their own registration with us, yeah.
Why is December the heaviest?
Years ago, we used to not have staggered registration, and all carriers had to renew in December once a year. Years ago, I think it might have been more than 15 years ago, we started separating that out, staggered registration, so that we wouldn't have that huge influx of work, and it's once a quarter now that we have.
Is there a way to normalize that across all months?
We're actually trying to push people to other months and not add as many folks to that December and keep
No,
adding
I'm
to
gonna
that.
go take the December people. and
Yes,
take 'em
there
to
is a
June.
way to do that. A lot of people don't want to, though we've asked them a lot, and they're like, nope, I want to stick with December, but there is a way to do that.
Jerry, did I understand you got offices in Hannibal and where else?
Kirksville.
Kirksville.
And we're going to utilize the district office there, and the Northeast District is accommodating us.
Well, thank you.
Commissioner, thank you for the report, Jerica. It's just amazing to me how many different things your department does. And so we just really appreciate, and we know it's been tough because you've been understaffed, and I know the public hasn't been happy, but thank you for all your hard work and your staff's hard work, and it's going to get better. So,
Yes, we think so too. It's looking up, so we'll definitely pass that on to my staff. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I might, Jerica's taken on one of the most challenging managerial roles we have. New system, 50% turnover, 76% increase in customers, all at the same time. Talk about a perfect storm, pandemic, all of those challenges. They manage multiple federal programs that are pretty complicated, So bringing somebody in new to get them proficient is a 6-month endeavor minimum. So, this is just not something where we've been able to apply people from other places of MoDOT. And so that adds to the challenge. I'm a little embarrassed that we didn't come up with the idea of spreading this out and to encourage employment. Appreciate the thanks for that, but you could have said, where were you 2 years ago? And that would have been a correct assessment. So we were a little slow on the draw here, and that's not Jerica's fault. That's my fault. And so we're starting to get the support that they need to improve the service. And I tell you, once the trucking industry is used to this new system, which is based on the regulations, the old system didn't cover us for all of the regulatory needs. And in fact, what we had are audit violations because of that. So it's a primary control point. And even though if you were used to not being able to fulfill all of your requirements that are federally required as an individual company, you might have liked that, but it wasn't good. And that creates problems down the line. We think this is going to improve service directly to trucking companies. There are a lot of firms that offer services kind of as a middle tier, if you will, fee-for-service companies. We're hoping that truckers can save money themselves by learning this system and going in directly so that they don't have to, pay a transaction fee for a basic thing they can do in this system. That creates a little frustration too. But frankly, I think ultimately we're serving the trucking industry who serves the whole economy. And being able to do that directly and save them some money along the way, that's what this system is going to help do. So.
And then those blocks you talked about, Eric, it hasn't been that big a deal, has it?
It's gonna get easier. It'll get easier now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Before I go to public comment, I'd like to recognize Jennifer Hoskins from Congressman Lukemar's office. Jennifer's here. Thanks for coming down to the commission meeting. And Senator Elaine Gannon has arrived. Senator, thanks for being with us. Okay, members of the public who did not schedule a presentation before the commission may speak to the commission or transportation related issues, having signed in the registration desk. Comments will be limited to 5 minutes per person, 10 minutes per topic. Madam Secretary, I do have some public speakers, and I'll call Scott Meyer with Transamerica Corridor, PE.
Would be okay if Earl went, I think we came together and Earl was gonna go first.
Oh, Earl Norman with Benton Hill Company would like to speak. Earl, thanks for sitting there and waiting.
First of all, thank you, Commissioner Brinkman. Thank you also, Mr. McKenna. Had an opportunity to meet you in Cape Girardeau and enjoyed that. And the commission. First of all, I wanted to compliment you on what I've heard this morning. I have run a business for many, many years, a national business. And I think for a state organization, this comes the closest to that type of business that I was part of, with all the decisions you've made and the positive things you had. And I look forward to seeing some nice results in our state as a result of that. I'd like to chat with you just a little bit about a project that we started in 1987. It's called today the Transamerica Corridor. It was begun because of a need that we have in our community for an east-west highway. And I would like to give you a little background on why that need is there, because it needs to be corrected. On September 17th, 1963, Governor John Dalton from Kennett and governors from Tennessee, Kentucky, and Illinois met at Kentucky Dam Village And they hatched up a plan to move I-24 from its deserved and assigned terminus at Cape Girardeau or Scott City in Cape Girardeau to Southern Illinois, so he could also get 412 coming across from Caruthersville to Kennett as a highway to his community. John Dalton was from Kennett, Missouri. At that time, we didn't realize it. We were in a railroad economy. But in 1980, we changed to a trucking economy. And now all at once, Cape Girardeau had no east-west highway. We had the transportation department build us a beautiful bridge, prettiest, I think, in the state of Missouri. But it ends 3 miles east of our bridge at in a soybean field. And it ends just on the other side of I-55 in a hayfield. And now, try and get a business to locate in your community. We talked about these big warehouses. They're not coming to Cape Girardeau. And I want to share a stat with you about what it meant to us. From 1900 to 1980, Cape Girardeau average growth for 80 years was 2.49% a year. In 1980 to now, that's 42 years, it's dropped to 0.5% a year. That's 1/5 of our 80-year average growth. And that's directly as a result of that. At one time, we were in the 15-year plan. And that was to improve Route 34, Missouri State 44, over to connect with Highway 60. Is that all the time I got left? Oh my. Anyway, that was the only project that I'm aware of that was not finished in the 15-year plan. And so as a result, we right now have a 148-mile gap of east-west federal highways in Cape Girardeau. The average from New Orleans to Minneapolis is 47 miles. And the reason is because I-44 splits, goes north, 60 goes a little south, and we've got a big hole in that part of the state. So to correct that hole, we got together with cities from coast to coast. We formed the I-66 project, incorporated in 1989. And with Bill Emerson, the congressman's help, we were successful in getting it into the congressional list of high priority projects in 1991. It has resided there since. It's the only major east-west highway. Now, why is that important? When the interstate system was designed, it was designed on the census of 1950. At that time, only 14 million people lived in California, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. Today, there's 80 million people living there. So they only built, and there was no trade with the Pacific Rim, there was no trade with the European Common Market. So they only built 3 interstates that went all the way through, and we found that out, and we were successful in getting that in the federal highway bill. It is high priority number 3. Number 1 is I-49 now from Kansas City down to the Arkansas line. Number 2 is Avenue of the Saints. We desperately need that. And Scott will be able to share with you some of the reasons why this project needs to be built and needs to be a priority for the commission down the road. And my time is gone. Thank you very much.
Scott Meyer.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I spent 22 years of my life with Modot. And so about, oh no.
You just leave that alone, okay?
Anyway,
Operator.
I'm sorry.
18 years ago, I left the highway department, but I will tell you that it is very impressive where the department has gotten from that point to today. As Earl said, you're a very well run operation and really are addressing those critical needs of maintaining the system we have. Applaud you for that. I'd like to say hi to a lot of friends that are here, but my 5 minutes is rapidly diminishing. So Earl told the history and why This was put into the federal bill. It still exists in the federal bill as number 3 high priority. The Missouri Chamber recently in their Transportation 2030 report talked about this corridor and the importance of using innovative transportation things to make a difference in the future of our state. And we applaud them for that and believe in that. Also, there was a study done after the corridor was approved. There was a study done that looked at the whole corridor and said, what would happen if you built that corridor? Well, what would happen is about 30% of the traffic on I-70 and about 30% of the traffic on I-40 would come to this corridor because it would be more efficient and take some pressure off those. Obviously, when you look at your freight study and your congestion studies that you have on I-70 and and even I-44, those are going to reach capacity, not only in passenger cars, but in freight as well in the future. This is a project for the future. We're not saying that this is going to solve the supply chain problems or your freight problems, this decade. But we also have to look forward to, 20 years from now. The best time to start this project was when Earl started it in 1989. If that had gone forward, then we would be driving on it right now. And a lot of those problems would not exist. Obviously, a lot of financial reasons of why that didn't happen, understand. But, it's like planting a tree. The best time to plant a tree was 25 years ago. Second best time to plant a tree is today. And so we're just asking that to make you aware of that. So we besides the traffic that would move to this corridor, we also believe that it would have impacts on things like the bottleneck in Chicago, the rail bottleneck that's there. There are people up there trying to solve that. We believe if we could pull some of the rail traffic before it goes up and then back down to the East Coast and bring it south, that would be a significant impact on that. We believe your freight plan really acknowledges that there's issues with freight and they're going to get worse into the future on 44, on 70. And so we believe that also does that. We've talked to folks in Wichita and Springfield, some people in Bowling Green, Paducah, and they believe that if we could have a stronger east-west corridor through there using roads that we have, that really it can make a significant difference out in the future. And so that's the reason we've advocated for this. One of the mistakes I believe we made in the past was that we really went and talked to a lot of people politically. We got it on the national. We didn't do our homework with the staff of the DOTs. And so that's what Earl has asked me to do, is to work with the DOTs. Ed's been great to me, and Cheryl, he referred me to Cheryl, and we've been able to share and bring him up to speed to that. She's also shared with me people in adjoining states that we can talk to begin to find out, well, so if we did this, what are the pinch points? What are the problems? One of the things they said right off the bat is we don't want more stuff to take care of. Well, that's just smart business, right? It's asset management. So we're looking at ways to deal with that issue. So we're looking at using as much existing corridors we can. Maybe it has to be upgraded, but that's one of the things that we're looking at. Taking care of it, we are looking at a very innovative model, kind of off of the Tennessee Valley Authority, where we asked the federal government, if you look at the bipartisan infrastructure bill, all these different infrastructure pieces are in that bill. Many of those pieces are in our proposal for this corridor. It includes electric grid. It includes electric grid improvement. It includes broadband. It includes freight. It includes a pipeline. Those things can all be in the same corridor, and then they can move resources around our country from places of great need with people that have excess. We believe it really can do that. Big thing. But that's what TVA did. They made a big investment in the infrastructure, and then through their sales, through their user fees, through their rates, they take care of it with that. And that's what we're proposing, is that we could take care of the road with those fees. Now, what we want is a study to be able to look at this, to build a digital twin of this, and be able to look at what happens to that, and then look and see what fees might be with that, and to see, is this really feasible? And if so, where? And where should it start? So we apologize for taking more than my 5 minutes. I'll stop now. and just give you the Reader's Digest version. Thank you.
Thank you,
So
Scott.
How far is Cape off of Interstate 55, or is it right there?
Right there, it's right there. Our problem is not north-south. Our problem is
East-west.
east-west.
Yeah. I've just looked at the map. I'm not familiar with that.
Thank you.
Scott City, what's that? Thank you all.
Patrick?
Yeah, I just want to thank both Scott and Mr. Norman. You know, we have by necessity had to deal with very parochial issues, deferred maintenance for 30, I mean, literally conditional issues that are atrocious that we're only starting to scratch the surface of. So we have to remember to not to be thinking on a strategic and a visionary level. That is what Mr. Norman has been doing, and I would agree with what Mr. Myers said about had we advanced this type of notion back in 1989, we may well not be experiencing the supply chain issues that we have today. And so while we're continuing to focus on those very, very local level needs of the system, we also have to remember the strategic benefits, not only for the region, but for the country. And ideas like this are bold, and they come with, you know, scary price tags and things like that. But when you do look at those other revenue sources and try to piece those things together, you know, it really is it's a vision of a system that would certainly have benefited a 50 million person growth along that corridor that has happened. And so I just want to thank you for your vision and for continuing to be an advocate for this, because, you know, to the extent that we look at the major strategic investments, until you start thinking of them, until you start plotting the path, they're not possible, but it has to start with the vision. And this is a very interesting proposal and something that should be a matter of conversation and deliberation, I think, for this commission going forward.
I didn't say where we were looking for funding for the study. We are targeting right now money from the Delta Regional Authority. They were given $125 million with the bipartisan infrastructure bill. We would ask for a couple of million to do that study and build that digital twin to look at that. So we're not asking money from you all, we're just asking for your knowledge and support. Thank you very much for that.
That's good. We're out of money.
I don't think you realize how big a gap in California between I-40 and I-80. It's almost 600 miles. Wow. Can you imagine what that does to them? Why we have supply chain problems because they traditionally haven't been able to get through there. Now we can. And this project would allow that. So it's there, it's in the middle. It's a matter of do we want that? And I predict one more thing. You do this project, Springfield will be the next Kansas City. Big Durham will be the next Springfield.
Whoa. Thank you.
I have one comment. One of the things I heard that I didn't particularly care for was they said that they had heard that we're not really interested in doing it because we don't want something else to take care of, something to that effect. And I think that's kind of short-sighted on our part, maybe.
Those were the other DOTs that they talked to.
Okay, well, it's short-sighted on their part then. Thank you, Patrick. But the problem with that, you're not looking at what, it may increase maintenance, right? Maintenance costs and that, but it may decrease maintenance somewhere else when you take the traffic from the other place. So I think you got to look at the whole picture, and I appreciate the presentation.
Thank you. We have one other speaker, Renee Reeder from Jefferson County Council. Renee?
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for letting me have a couple minutes of your time. I am on the county council. I've been on the county council since 2011 when we adopted the the charter that required a separate council from the legislative body is separate from the executives. My district right now has the 141 corridor between Fenton and Arnold. And I wanted to just reiterate some of the things you heard earlier today by Mr. Courtway. Some of the projects in Jefferson County that are on the list but haven't yet been categorized are floodproofing, both 141 and I'm not talking about the old 141, I'm talking about the new 141. And every bridge in and out of Jefferson County has flooded. We have had times since I've been elected in 2011, the first time, we've had times where we can't get from St. Louis County to Jefferson County. Now, some people call us a collar county, a part of the metropolitan area. We've got Highway 55. The Highway 55 bridge across the Merrimack Bridge, whenever that floods, that really hurts interstate commerce. I mean, that is a major, major problem. And to have our county cut off when 75% of our employees pre-COVID would go to St. Louis County to work every single day. They were making decisions as to where they were going to put their head at night. Families were being split, and they didn't know how long it was going to take for those highways to be reopened. So that's a really, really important thing to try to flood-proof these bridges. The other thing I wanted to just mention is the 141 corridor. We are building in that area, and the houses are getting closer together, much more dense, lots more cars coming and going. And it was great whenever you put the new 141 in. That made a huge difference for the people of our county. Many people would drive into St. Louis County using that highway. Well, now it's almost impossible to drive it in any way that's reasonable during the rush hour. And the rush hour usually takes 2 hours to get through in the morning and 2 hours in the afternoon. That's not stopping the building. It's just making it more uncomfortable for everyone. So if there's any way that you can categorize these projects more urgently, urgent change is needed in those areas. And I just wanted to mention that to all of you. Secondly, I wanted to mention to you that I'm really, really impressed that you took the time to come to Jefferson County. This is the first time I believe you've had a meeting here since I've been elected. And it's just very nice to have you here visiting our little corner of the world. And Terry, I hope you're keeping that seat warm because I've been sitting in that one for a long time. I'm not used to being on this side of the dais. And also, I just wanted to introduce myself to each of you. I am the state representative-elect for District 112, so I'll be in Jefferson City with all of you starting in January. So I look forward to working with you in that capacity as well. So thank you all so much for your time. Thank you for coming here, and I hope you enjoy your time here in beautiful Jefferson County.
Thank you. Congratulations. I don't have a sheet, but is Tim Brinker in the room? He was going to speak. No? Okay. All right. Typically, at the end of each meeting, we like to provide each commissioner member an opportunity to share any concerns or comments that they may have. Today, I'll start with Commissioner Boatwright.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I always scribble notes kind of off to the side. Really, the tone of today is a comment that the director made a few minutes ago, which was visionaries. You know, you look throughout this country, I mean, there's projects all throughout. One that I'm intimately involved with, which is the Little River Drainage District project. And then, of course, on the bigger scale, the Mississippi River and Tributaries project, which is really the reason, you know, the flood control, the 1927 flood and then the Flood Control Act of 1928 really set in motion a civil works system, civil works project in the country that's given back more than 100 to 1 to the federal investment. And the reason that we can have conversations about the Jefferson County Port bringing in container on vessel, container on barge, that is going to, today push us in the direction for growth in the future. So it's super exciting to have folks in the room that are thinking big. Mr. Norman, Scott, thank you guys for being here. These kinds of conversations, and if you look at Jefferson County and what you guys have done, being proactive, not taking no for an answer, moving the needle, thinking outside the box, and making this opportunity happen. That's what we have to do to continue to grow in Missouri and to continue to make our infrastructure system work for us. So thank you so much for everybody in the room that's taken time to be here today. And Mr. Chairman, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Mr. Eckert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me turn my mic on there. I just want to say it's great to be in Jefferson County. The hospitality that was shown to us last night and today has just been great. And it's great to be this part of the state. I want to thank Tom Blair for the rolling tour on the way down to look at some projects that we're doing. That was interesting, especially since we'd kind of looked at them before and seen the progress. That was really nice. Man, the STIP is just exciting. Compared to when I came on the commission 5.5 years ago, it's amazing where we've gotten to. Want to just send out a big thank you to the governor and Senator Hageman for the additional resources for the cost share and the low volume road funding. We know in northern Missouri, right, Don, that the roads up there are a little different than down here. We build roads on topsoil instead of on rock, and so they're a little harder to maintain. And it's good to see Don here. Known Don for several years. I'm a little disappointed though. I found out he only lives 20 miles from here. He didn't invite me over for like a cocktail last night or anything. So all the presentations that were great today, but I'm like what's already been said by Commissioner Boatwright. The container thing is just amazing to me. 20 years ago, when I was on the United Soybean Board, we started looking at shipping soybeans in containers, backhauling them from containers that were coming from China. And now to see where the container industry is just phenomenal. And I think that's going to be an exciting future. So I hope I get your name right, Renee. The seat is great. Look forward to seeing you in Jeff City. And I don't think the seat's going to be near as comfortable. So, but good luck to you. So
It won't be as cool anyway.
yeah, got a beautiful facility here.
Yes, it's
Thank you.
nice. Thank you. Mr. Briscoe, you always get no thunder, so I'll let you go.
I don't have much thunder. What's been said is so far, and I'll have to chime in and say amen to the things that Dustin said and that Terry said. I do want to repeat though how much we appreciated the hospitality yesterday evening and today, and what a wonderful venue this has been for us. Sometimes we've been had meetings at some venues that weren't quite this cool, and all the presentations were terrific, but I was raised on a gravel road in the country, and my place is still, I live in town, but my place is still in the gravel road in the country. And the progress that's been made on these country roads, the low volume roads, is just fantastic. And I am so pleased. I think back, maybe in the early 1950s, I remember my grandfather talking about what a wonderful deal that some county road was going to be made a King Bill Road. I think that must have been named after Bus King when he was in the House 1,000 years ago. But anyway, it's fantastic to see what progress has been made on these country roads. I thank everybody for that, and I surrender.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith.
You're not gonna make me go last.
No.
No, I just want to thank County Executive Gannon for letting us use his facility today. It's wonderful. And as John said, we've been in some not quite this good. And Senator, Representative, thank you all for being here today. We appreciate your support for transportation. We really do. Earl, I think I heard this speech one time about 6 or 7 years ago when we were, I think it was Cape. Is that where Port Seaman is? Yeah, we were down there and I met you there. I remember you there. But anyway, it's good to be here. It's great to see Greg Horn. I think Greg might have slipped out. I don't know if he's still there. No, there he is. Good to see Don. You guys make yourself a little more apparent and get around us some. We like seeing you guys. So but anyway, thanks for everything. Jefferson County is a beautiful county. I've never been here, but I have now. So anyway, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Waters.
I'm gonna have to be careful how I take notes from now on because I think Terry and John have been stealing my notes. I wanted to recognize Mark Shelton and Don Wisham and Greg Horn too.
Oh, Mark, I'm sorry. I didn't see you.
Three former district engineers outnumbering the current district engineers in the room. So congratulations. And then I've got a list of thank yous. We've got a kind of behind the scene crew that really struggled this month. And I just want to thank them for the extra hard work that they did to put this meeting together. It looks like it ran really smooth today and is so easy to accomplish, but there's a lot of hard work that went into it and extra work this month. So thank you to you folks. Also on my list, Tom Blair. That's one of them that Terry stole for the tour yesterday. Appreciate that. Got to see this I-55 project. Well, I guess we got to see the pre-I-55 project that we just approved to get started on a design build. So great. Misty, I think, is not here today, but she gave a great report in our closed meeting yesterday, and it was neat to see all the work of the audit and investigation team that they're doing. So somebody pass that along to Misty and her team. And then the reception last night's been mentioned. I really appreciated that. The folks that put that together. That's another thing that went off really smooth. And I know there was a lot of work and people that worked on that for us, and we appreciate that. Finally, Mr. Chairman, when Governor Nixon appointed me, we sat down in his office and he gave me 3 things he wanted me to I guess work on or participate in, look after as a highway commissioner. The first one, I'm a farmer, so he knew I'd be interested in rural roads, so he wanted me to look after rural roads. I do a lot of stuff with the Missouri River, and he knew that, and he wanted me to look after ports and navigation on the Missouri River, transportation. And then the third thing he told me was he wanted to see our districts work together better. And you heard Brenda talk about today that we put money into being able to take personnel from one district to another in times of disaster. And he really stressed that to me. So, man, I think this meeting today, the rural roads, what we've done today, and to hear the reports on the ports and the container on barge and knowing that we're shifting resources when we need them in times of emergency, I feel really good today. So thank you.
You do know how to operate.
I do
now. I don't have a whole lot to add to that other than like you. When I used to come down here, it was about 6 years ago, and it was Highway 21. You'd go past the Dewdrop Inn. Anybody remember that? And it was a hike getting down here, and I spent my summers down here, and got to go swimming at the Olympic pool. My mom called it the Big River in Washington State Park. So it's good to be down here, and I was surprised this morning. I haven't been down here a while, but how nice these roads are, and it is a pleasure to be here. You know, we wanted to come here 2 years ago and COVID hit, and so we're glad we got down here, and I hope we get down here again before I get off the commission. It's just a joy. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. After I tell you when the next meeting is.
We adjourn.
Before we do that, I have to tell you that the next meeting is July 6th, and that'll be in Jeff City. So we hope you will join us there.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
Good job, Mr. Chairman. This was a hell of a good meeting, I thought. This was a damn good meeting.